Merrimack TV is committed to our community. From gavel-to-gavel coverage of town and school board meetings to updates on town services and projects, we aim to keep you connected.
Good morning, I'm Kyle Fox, Public Works Director for the town of Merrimack.
Hi, I'm Diane Trippett. I'm the town clerk tax collector for the town of Merrimack.
I'm Captain Matt Tarleton with the Merrimack, New Hampshire Police Department.
And keep the public informed of every motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
And many moments, so you can be confident that we're here for you. Thanks for watching. Stay connected. Follow Merrimack TV on Facebook.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks.
Okay, 7 p.m. Let me call to order the meeting of the Merrimack Planning Board for Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. Before we begin or go any further in the conduct of our business, let me go through the required script regarding remote meetings under the Right to Know law. As chair of the Merrimack Planning Board, due to COVID-19 crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-4, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing either of the following phone numbers: 1-312-626-6799 or 1-929-205-6099, and entering the meeting ID, which is 983-6815-7892. The meeting may also be viewed on Merrimack TV Channel 20 on Comcast Cable or Merrimack TV webpage at http://merrimacktv.com. We are providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided in the meeting agenda posted on the Town of Merrimack's website at www.merrimacknh.gov/planning-board. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please email tthompson@merrimacknh.gov. We would adjourn the meeting if the public is unable to access it. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we'll adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, also please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. All right, Alistair Milnes.
Present, Mr. Chairman, and I'm by myself in my room.
Neil Anketel.
I am here and I am alone in the office.
Nelson Disco.
I am here, I am in my home, and I am all by myself.
Has Councillor Boyd or any other planning board members joined us yet? I see none, and so I am Robert Best. I am alone in my office in Concord, New Hampshire. So we do have 3 regular members and 1 alternate. I'll appoint Nelson into a voting position, substituting for Lynn Christensen. That makes 4 and gives us a quorum to conduct business. For public participation during this future virtual meeting, in order to participate, the public needs to follow the instructions that are on the meeting agenda and then press *9 on the phone when prompted to do so. That is when I, as the chair, open the public hearing. This will display as a hand wave, letting me know and the town staff know that the caller wishes to speak. Please also make sure applicants and any speaking members of the public clearly identify themselves for the record with both name and address. Our next planning board meeting after tonight is currently scheduled for December 15th, 2020 at 7 p.m. remotely via Zoom. That concludes the call to order for our meeting and brings us to item 2 on our agenda, which is a planning and zoning administrator's report. Tim, have you a report for us?
I don't have anything specific for this evening. I would note that Councilor Boyd has now arrived, so you can add him to the roll.
Excellent. Councilor Boyd, will you please, as a part of our roll call, announce your presence and anybody that's in the room with you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We can now.
Okay, this is Bill Boyd. I am at 139 Joppa Road. I'm currently upstairs in my office. I am alone. However, my daughter, my wife, and our 2 dogs are in the house. So a potential exists that a cameo may occur where they walk in. But I am here. I can hear everybody, and I'm prepared to participate tonight. Thank you, Mr.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilor Boyd. That makes 5 board members present for our business tonight. Tim, you had nothing else in your planning and zoning administrator's report. Is there any questions by members of the board for the staff? Seeing none, then we'll move on to item 3 on our agenda. Item 3 is the John Flatley Company as the applicant and owner. It is continued review of a site plan to construct 100,000 square feet of research and development warehouse in 3 proposed buildings and associated site improvements per the requirements of the Flatley mixed-use conditional use permit. The parcel is located at 685 Daniel Webster Highway in the I-1 Industrial District and the Aquifer Conservation and Wellhead Protection areas. It is tax map 6E, lot 3-4. It is case planning board 2020-19, and it is continued from our September 1st, October 6th, October 20th, and November 10th planning board meeting. And I have a note, which is now on the screen, seeking a continuance of this hearing until January 5, 2021. What is the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we accept the applicant's request to continue this matter till January the 5th, 2021, with no further notice to abutters.
Is there a second for Alistair's motion?
A second.
Second by Neil Anketel. If there's no discussion, then let's do a roll call vote. Tim, you got a hand up.
Point of order.
I just want.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Boyd. Just to let the board know, members of Flatley's team, town staff, and Merrimack Village District had a Zoom meeting yesterday with different portions of NHDES, both hazardous materials and the AOT and other environmental sections, to talk about drainage and the concerns that were raised by MVD in their letter that the board considered last month. Based on that meeting and their desire to discuss further what the specific needs are for town staff, particularly Public Works, regarding our recommendations on waivers to both the stormwater ordinance and the site plan regulations, they felt it was appropriate to have a little bit of time to make that contact with Dawn and asked that we continue the application to January 5th. And they also are granting a 30-day extension to the time for consideration under RSA 676-4.
Thank you, Tim. Councilor Boyd, you also wanted to raise a question.
It was a question because I did read this particular email and I wasn't happy with the. Go ahead, Tim. You know where I'm going. Do you want me to do you want to finish my thought?
You can go ahead. I will just say there's a reason why I had the top of this email, because staff does not necessarily agree with either of the first 2 paragraphs that were in the letter.
Is it premature for me to express an opinion, or am I better off bringing it up on January 5th? I have no problem waiting.
It's more appropriate to do it in the public hearing process.
I'll keep my powder dry and wait till January 5th. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor Boyd, and my apology for the informality with calling on and interrupting and that sort of thing.
Mr. Chairman, not a problem. Don't worry about it.
Excellent. Any other discussion about the request for a continuance? If Nelson, you have a hand up.
Yeah, my question would be if they can really do this by January 5th. If you read that letter carefully, there's quite a lot of work to be done there. And
as you know, the recommendation from staff has been since October that because this has a set of very unique circumstances, that this is not going to proceed per a typical planning board process. As it stands right now, it's the position of my department and Public Works that no recommendation will be made on any of the waiver requests until they have their state and federal permitting in hand. So until that happens, our recommendation was an indefinite continuance so that that process can play out before the board makes any decisions.
is the state up to date on the letter that we received from MVD?
That was the purpose of the Zoom meeting that we had yesterday.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'll go along with the delay then, you guys. But I just have a concern about the timing of this.
I still fully expect that there will eventually be an indefinite continuance on this project.
Well, okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So maybe we don't necessarily need to sort it out right now, but is there a reason for continuing to January 5 and then having an indefinite continuance, or should we?
It is the applicant's hope that they can convince staff that we do not need to follow that process and that there will be enough information to make recommendations on waivers. But at this stage, until that meeting takes place in between now and January 5th, I'm not in a position to make comment other than the current recommendation.
Okay. On that basis that they want an opportunity to meet and try to persuade the staff of various things, I think it's reasonable to continue to January 5 and then see where they're at, and at that point make a decision.
For my own clarification, since I forgot it in my notes, it was Alistair that made the motion?
Alistair made the motion and Neil made the second.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay. Then let's do a roll call vote on this. Alistair, how do you vote?
I vote aye, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Boyd, how do you vote?
Reluctantly, I vote aye.
Neil Anketel, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Nelson Disco, how do you vote?
Aye.
I abstain from this matter as it's one with a conflict of interest and I shouldn't vote on it. 4-0-1, though, the motion to continue carries till January 5th. Next item on our agenda is item 4, which is As Life Goes On LLC as the applicant and Phyllis and Laura Benson as the owners. Continued review for acceptance and consideration of a site plan to convert an existing building, currently vacant, most recently a former personal service use, to a 24-bed assisted living facility. The parcel is located at 585 Daniel Webster Highway in the C1 Limited Commercial and R4 Residential, Aquifer Conservation, and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts. It's tax map 61, lot 46. It is case number Planning Board 2020-27, and the item is continued from our November 10th, 2020 Planning Board meeting. Tim, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In your packet, you should have a memo dated November 23rd from Planning and Zoning Administrator Robert Price. This is probably most well known as the former Levi Lowell's restaurant building. That has had both residential and other commercial uses in that space since Levi Lowell's had moved out. This project had been before the zoning board a couple months ago, received the appropriate relief regarding the assisted living on a lot with 1.37 acres where 3 acres is typically required. The Planning Board continued this last month at the applicant's request as we were awaiting the receipt of peer review comments. Those have now been received. And at this point, given the request, their waiver that the applicant submitted later this afternoon, we think it's in a position for both acceptance and a decision on the merits of the project tonight.
Thank you, Tim. Is the applicant here on the phone with us?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Chad Brandon with Fieldstone Land Consultants. I'll be representing the applicant this evening.
Good evening, Chad. Please proceed.
Okay, perfect. I'll be representing As Life Goes On LLC this evening with their site plan application to redevelop tax map parcel 61-46. The subject property is situated on the south side of Daniel Webster Highway, has a physical address of 585 Daniel Webster Highway, and consists of 1.32 acres of land. If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring the plan up if I could.
Sounds good. Do you want to have control over it, or Tim, you want Tim to put it up there for you, or what's the easiest way to deal with that?
I'll put it up if that's okay.
All right, Tim, can you give him the permission to do that? Excellent. Go for it.
Can everybody see the plan?
I can.
I can, thank you.
Perfect. So taking a look at the existing conditions plan that we have before you, you can see that the property has frontage along Daniel Webster Highway to the north, which is located along this length of road here. The property also has frontage along Maple Street to the west, along this section here. And then the rear of the property has frontage along Pleasant Street, along this location here. I'm assuming everybody can see the cursor, so I'm just moving that along. The zoning for the property is primarily C1 limited commercial, and the rear portion of the property is in the R4 residential district. As Mr. Thompson stated, the site is also in the Aquifer Conservation and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts, as well as in the Wellhead Protection Area. The site is surrounded by a mixture of uses with a multi-unit commercial plaza to the southwest, Shaw's Supermarket to the northwest, and then the property is surrounded by residential uses elsewhere along the perimeter. The improvements on site currently consist of a 10,500 square foot building. You can see that that's positioned on the northeast side of the site, this location here. That building currently consists of a 5-bedroom, 2-story residential portion with a former day spa, along with associated site improvements. As was stated, the site was occupied and probably best known as the former Levi Lowell's restaurant, which I believe occupied the site back in the late 70s. The property currently has 2 curb cuts along DW Highway on the north side of the site, and 3 curb cuts off of Maple Street, which service the property. The topography on site generally slopes from northwest to southeast towards Pleasant Street, and the site is currently serviced by municipal sewer and water, as well as overhead electric and communications. The redevelopment of this site will consist of converting the 10,500 square foot building into a 24 bed assisted living group home facility. This project will consist of renovating and repurposing the existing structure with a use that we believe will be compatible with the neighborhood. The only proposed exterior improvements, other than updating the building, will be to enclose the existing breezeway which connects the 2 structures. So you have the residential structure here on the southwest side, and then the former day spa would be on the northeast side here. And then you have a breezeway here that connects the 2. We would be enclosing that and then constructing an elevator tower on the back side of that breezeway, if you will. The proposed site improvements for this project will consist of constructing a new parking lot, as well as walkways, site lighting, landscaping, and stormwater management improvements. Taking a closer look at these improvements, you can see on the southwest side of the existing building, we are proposing a 20 space parking lot. That parking lot will provide ample service for the building. And in that parking lot, we are proposing 2 ADA accessible spaces. We have a sidewalk proposed on the northeast side of that parking area, as well as improvements to the site for access to the building. We are also proposing a ADA a ramp, which will provide access to the first floor story of the existing building. Along with the parking lot site improvements, we are proposing a new alignment for the access to the rear of the building, and that's shown here going out around the back of the building. That'll be primarily for deliveries, loading of materials, and maintenance. We do have the dumpster enclosure located out in the back here. This is an 18-foot wide access to the rear of the site. We have reviewed that with the fire department, and they have accepted the dimensional standards that we're proposing. By consolidating the access to the rear of the building with the parking lot, we are able to remove 2 curb cuts that currently exist along Maple Street. So certainly those areas will be restored and vegetated as part of this project, and that'll be improvements along Maple Street. The site lighting that we're proposing with this project will consist of 5 pole-mounted lights along the perimeter of the parking area, as well as 1 building-mounted light on the rear of the existing building near the loading area. We did submit a detailed lighting plan with the project, and we believe the lighting plan does exceed all the local requirements. Stormwater mitigation for this project will be accomplished through the construction of a stormwater infiltration basin along the south corner, or at the south corner of the property. The site has been designed to collect and convey all of the stormwater from the improvements proposed to this area. So we will satisfy all the local stormwater standards through that infiltration basin. Along with those site improvements, we are proposing some landscaping improvements. This is the lighting plan here, but we are proposing some landscaping improvements. That would consist of primarily landscaping along Maple Street and then along the Daniel Webster side of the proposed parking lot. Other site improvements for this project consists of widening the loop access off of Daniel Webster Highway. This access will be utilized for drop-offs and pickups, and primarily for any emergency response personnel. The fire department has requested that we increase the width of that loop to 16 feet wide. Currently, it's about 14 feet in width, so it's a minor widening. So we will be revising the plans to address their comments for that section. We have had a chance to review the November 23rd staff memo for tonight's meeting, and we don't have any objections to any of the recommended conditions of approval, but we would like to get some clarification on one of the items when the time is right, Mr. Chairman. We also are in receipt of Fuss and O'Neill's review for the project. We have gone through and have made a good portion of the revisions to address their letter. We have no objections to any of their comments as well. Everything's pretty minor in their letter. As Mr. Thompson stated, we did submit a waiver request. That waiver request was actually mentioned in the memorandum for this meeting. That waiver request is from section 3.11I1 of the site plan regulations regarding interior landscaping requirements for the parking lots. I submitted this waiver request earlier today after having an opportunity to review the details of this regulations with staff. And I can certainly go over this request when the board would like as well. So this concludes my brief presentation of the project, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have or go into additional details on any of these proposed improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad, for going through your presentations. Very detailed and very well done. Board members, the first question before us is determining whether the application is complete and contains sufficient information for us to make an informed decision. Do you have any questions of the applicant in order to bring you to that decision? If not, is there a motion?
I would have a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Maybe we can wait until we've accepted it, but I would like to discuss the option to put a sidewalk along Route 3 on that section of Daniel Webster Highway on this property.
Okay. Excellent. I think that would be an appropriate conversation to have once we've accepted the application. Is there any questions regarding on the issue or question of acceptance? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we have sufficient information to enable us to review this matter and come to some decisions.
Is there a second? Second by Councillor Boyd. Let's see, if there's no further discussion on completeness, let's do a roll call vote. Alistair Milnes, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Councillor Boyd, how do you vote?
Boyd votes aye.
Neil Anketel.
I vote aye.
Nelson Disco.
Aye.
I also vote aye. So it's 5-0-0 to find the application complete. Let's open the floor for the board members to have a general discussion about the application. And then we will get on to talking about the waiver request and then take some public testimony if there is any. So step one, general discussion or questions about the application itself. Nelson?
Well, okay. I think we should have a sidewalk on Route 3 on this property, just for the length of Route 3. It would match up with the sidewalk to the property on the south of Maple Street. And I think it's part of the overall village of Reed's Ferry, where we intend to have sidewalks someday. But the other question I had also had to do with the fact that sheet 3 is called a demolition plan. And I guess I question that nomenclature. But anyway, let's hear what they have to say about that.
Excellent. Chad, comment on the sidewalk, Chad.
Sure. So, I mean, our preference would be to not construct a sidewalk on the property. Certainly, there's an existing sidewalk on the north side of Daniel Webster Highway, and I don't believe there's any sidewalks on the north east side of our site that continue in that direction. So, I mean, I think it would be best to utilize the sidewalk on the north side of Daniel Webster Highway and not require the construction of a sidewalk on our site. That would be our preference.
Okay. Comment on Nelson's observation that your third sheet is a demolition plan. I know there's some pavement that's being removed and things, but generally speaking, is there any other demolition that you've got planned for your?
No. So what we do is we typically have a demolition plan in a site plan set because it offers a lot of clarity as you navigate through the set. Basically, we detail what's being removed on site so that it's not shown later in the design plans. And so I'd be happy to pull that plan up and explain exactly what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of existing driveways that come into the property and existing access routes that we are removing. And by us having that plan, it allows us to detail those improvements and that they're being removed so that it's not missed during construction and the site work is done correctly. It also allows for the site plan to be more legible as you navigate through the plan set. That's the primary purpose of that plan.
there's no demolition proposed for any of the buildings. I guess that's really what I wanted to be sure of.
That's correct. All the demo on site is existing improvements, really relative to access, removing some of the landscaping, some sidewalk modifications and so on.
Okay. So what about the glass structure that's there? Isn't there like a greenhouse on the top? Do you guys, that's all staying?
I think the exterior walls of that are going to stay, but there will be improvements to that as part of the project, or the renovations of the building.
So the structure will be the same, but it may not be made out of glass anymore.
That's correct. That's my understanding.
Okay. Other comments or questions on demolition plan? Neil, I'm sorry.
So just so I understand correctly, I was looking at the print, and it's not on every sheet, but on the northwest entry, or the north entry of the site, it shows, is that a gravel edge? There's no curbing coming in off of the DW highway. The entrance on that side is just a paved area going up to gravel.
There is a paved area there, and I just want to make a correction that glass greenhouse is actually being removed as part of this project.
Okay.
So that portion of the building is being removed.
Right, so there'll be demo for that, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. But that driveway coming in on the DW highway there, that's a paved area up against, there's no curbing or a Cape Cod berm or anything there. It's just up against the grass.
If I could bring the plan up, I think I could explain it a little bit better. Do you mind if I bring that back up, Mr. Chairman?
No, please do. That'd be great. Councilor Boyd, I noted you had a question, so I'll call you in a second. So
if you take a look at, I'm just going to go back to the site plan here.
That's what I was referring to, and I don't see, in the legend, I don't see something to describe what I was looking at, so I had to go back to the other one. But.
Right, so this is an existing paved loop road here, and the entrance will be this way here to this breezeway. This is where the elevator will be, and there'll be an entrance here for any of the drop-offs and emergency access and so on. But there is no proposed curbing or anything over in this area. We're going to widen that loop road to meet the fire department's requirements, but we're not proposing any curbing.
So that'll be the primary entrance where people come in and out?
No, that will not be. That's not a primary entrance. The primary entrance and the main entrance to the site will be in this location here. This is where the parking lot is. This will be the main entrance to the facility. This will strictly be for drop off and emergency access. So if an ambulance has to visit the facility, this is the route that they'll utilize. If the fire truck needs to come, they'll likely utilize this. It'll be quicker for them to get into the site utilizing this entrance.
And the other parking area entrance will be primarily for the residents and the employees?
That's correct, and any visitors, yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Boyd, you had some questions or comments?
Well, it's all separate from the whole demolition piece, unless we're pivoting to something new.
This is general discussion about anything related to the plan.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. First question, I guess, to Tim. Just as an aside, we had a correspondence from Rick Price, who provided a wonderful picture of the old Levi Lowell's house. Is it possible that we could forward that along to the applicant? Because I think they'd be curious to see what the building looked like back in the old times. I don't know.
Certainly can.
Okay, and the reason why I say that is years ago, we lamented over the loss of the building that housed Madden's. And unlike, certain communities south of the border that have, distinct rules and regulations regarding historic preservation, Chad, I really want to commend the Bensons for making a commitment to this property, because I think what they're doing is a wonderful thing. And I mean that with all sincerity. This building, I hate to use the word iconic, but when you drive DW Highway, it certainly stands out as being something that was part of Merrimack's yesteryear. The fact that they're coming in and they're keeping the existing house and they're rehabbing it to fit a particular need, I think they're really to be commended. They really are. I learned from one of the comments from Mr. Price, who gave us the letter, that the Gordon name, I guess, is synonymous with the town of Merrimack as well. So I really want to commend the Bensons for keeping a theme involving the house. I'm sure a lot of us would have liked, the Levi Lowell's name to remain, but Gordon has the Gordon name has a specific significance in town, and I'm thankful for that as well. The third thing I wanted to comment on was the lighting plan. I think the lighting plan, the aluminum poles and the pendant mounts of the lanterns, I think is really nice, and it aesthetically is going to be attractive to the particular house as well. In general, I think what the Bensons have done, I want to say thank you to them. I think they've done, they've chosen not to tear something down and rebuild. They've chosen to preserve an artifact here in our community, and I certainly want to commend my thanks to them. So that is my general comment as it relates to the historical piece. The two questions I have, the first question, and maybe you can't answer, Chad, maybe it's a question for Tim, but is 20 parking spaces going to be ample for this type of facility? And I understand with assisted living, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Obviously, if we're still in the pandemic by the time that this gets operational, that might not be problematic, but I'm wondering if 20 parking spaces based on our guidelines for this type of facility is commensurate with the space.
Well, I can, if you don't mind, Mr. Thompson, if I can try my hand at that first. So I first want to start, Mr. Boyd, by saying that, I can share with you that the history of this property and restoring this building is a big part of our clients' goals and objectives. And that is part of the reason why, they're picking certain light fixtures and so on that they think will fit in well with what their plans are for the building. So I appreciate certainly you focusing on that. As it relates to the parking, what I can share with you is that 20 spaces is more than ample for this proposed use. And I share that my client has 5 other properties. Currently, I think they service about 80 residents, and many of their properties have about half of this parking, and they just don't really get used. The residents, that occupy these sites, many of them don't have vehicles, aren't allowed to drive anymore. And so there's plenty of, parking provided here. And in fact, when I reviewed some of the interior parking requirements with the client, they suggested that we could remove some parking if that was an interest. But I think, it makes sense to have 20 spaces here. It's certainly ample, and I do believe it meets the town regulations. So as a design engineer, we look at parking from 2 directions. It's, does it meet the regulations, but is it also going to service the facility? Because many times there are conflicts there, and a particular user may need more or may need less. And I know you guys have seen us before the board in some instances where we think we can get away with less, where we design for future parking and do something along those lines. But we're confident with this plan at 20, and I'll let Mr. Thompson fill in. Hopefully he's of support.
Tim, do you have comments on that?
Thank you, Chad and Mr. Chairman. I will just note that assisted living facilities, that parking requirement was one of the ones that was updated back, I want to say 2013, when we redid the parking section of the former site plan regulations, and those carried forward. Our current requirement is 1/2 a space per resident unit or bed, plus 1 per employee. and one for any facility vehicle or bus if they have one. So this 20 spaces is fully compliant with that requirement.
Thank you for that observation, Tim. Although when you said that we updated our parking in 2013, it reminded me that we still call these our new parking regulations. Hardly anymore. I've got a couple of assisted living clients that have buildings a bit bigger than this, but the parking is consistent with what Chad and Tim had represented as well. Very low parking demands from assisted living facilities. Bill, did you have further comments or questions?
I have a couple more questions, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Chad, as it relates to on the southeasterly side of the project, where you've got the proposed paved driveway, which is I guess an access road, is that curbing that's going all the way up the length of the driveway?
No, that's a shoulder.
That's a shoulder. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there, I guess the question I would ask is, do you think there's enough sloping there on the backside of the property that the proposed stormwater management area is going to be fully utilized? And then I have to ask this question because I would be derelict if I didn't ask the question. I trust that the stormwater area is also going to be MS4 compliant with our particular rules in town.
That's correct. I mean, many good questions. Many of them are actually in staff reviews and in Fuss and O'Neill's review.
Okay.
There's a couple comments that we've received relative to MS4. One of them in particular, they've asked us to put an oil water separator hood in this catch basin here in the parking lot. So I'll go through the stormwater in a little bit more detail because I think that might help address some of your concerns. So in general, the parking lot area, this 20 space parking lot drains to the southwest area in this direction here. We are proposing curbing along the parking lot side of Maple Street. And what that does is it allows us to collect all of that stormwater and convey it into this catch basin here. Once it's in the catch basin, it outfalls into this drainage swale, and that ultimately makes it into this infiltration basin. The infiltration basin is designed with a forebay on the inlet, which is a sediment forebay, so that will collect any sediment from the parking lot area that in the access area that may not get captured by this catch basin, other portions of the watershed. The access roadway here has been designed with a low point in this location here. So this is going to drain in this direction and then in this direction to a low point. And then the reason why this infiltration area kind of has a bump out on it to the north is to capture that watershed area and to collect and make sure we're collecting that. But with that said, there have been some comments in Fuss and O'Neill's letter, just really detail items like that oil water separator and things of that nature that we will be incorporating into the plan, which will make the plan more compliant with the town's MS4 standards. Because ultimately, if there is any flow from this infiltration basin in a large storm, it would go through the emergency spillway here and make its way into this catch basin right here. And that ultimately would be a flow into the town's system, which is an MS4 condition. Now we don't currently have any flow coming out of the basin and occurring, but just as an aside, if it was an extremely large storm, that potential, certainly has been designed for and exists.
Thank you, Chad. Bill, did you have other comments?
Well, Bill.
You're muted, Bill. Did you have any other comments?
Sorry, I apologize. I two more questions if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Of course.
The current location of the sign, Chad, is that going to remain the same location for the new signage for the Gordon House?
We're actually just move up here.
Because I was looking at the landscaping plan and unless I need to be looking at a different plan.
Yeah, we're flexible on the sign location, but we are showing a proposed sign on the site plan, which is kind of on the front side of the site off the parking lot in this location here. Favors the intersection of Daniel Webster Highway and Maple Street.
Oh, okay.
Now,
Where?
I see it. Okay. Yep. Okay.
this location here.
Yep.
Now, what I can tell you about the sign is we have submitted no details. In fact, we have notes on the plans that, any sign permit's going to happen as a separate application. We're just kind of reserving a location on this plan.
Okay.
Just for comment on that, Bill, that current location likely will need to move, or a variance will need to be obtained given the setback from DW Highway.
And I understand why the owners want to put it down there, because if they're going to be using Maple Street as an entrance to the facility, it makes sense to direct them in that location as opposed to, 50 feet up the road where they could blow by Maple Street and think where the turnaround is the entrance. So I get what they're trying to do. You answered my question regarding emergency access. I'm assuming that includes ambulances as well. I know it's kind of stupid, but as it relates to the turnaround, Chad, sorry.
That's correct.
Okay.
That would also be utilized for ambulances.
Okay. And then lastly, you know what? No, I think I'm good. Again, I'm really happy this has been, and I'm sure Nelson can attest to this, and maybe Bob can attest to this. One of the previous owners came before us, and they didn't want to do any paving. They just wanted to stripe the gravel parking lot, and I think we had 19 conditions on the site. And I think we're going, Nelson, I'm dating myself, 2008, 2009.
Back then, yeah.
Back then, I mean, that was a long time ago. And I know that this property has struggled over the last decade or so. So again, not to be redundant, but again, my thanks to the Bensons for making a commitment to not just the property, but to the house that's on the property. And I think if Anita Krieger was here, former chairman of the Heritage Commission, she'd be giving 2 thumbs up, because I know that she's been very vocal, not only about this, but some of the other properties that we have in town. So again, please thank the applicant again. I'm very grateful for what they're doing. It's appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Boyd, and I echo all of the thank yous and compliments that you had offered up for the development. I think I saw both Nelson and Neil with hands up, and I don't know who was first, but.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just wanted to piggyback what Councilor Boyd was saying, or some of his concerns. The storm water management, I was wondering on the westerly side of the property where the snow storage is, what's the topography there? Is that all pitched back into the parking lot and you'll have all that snow melt run back through the parking lot? Or is that going to run out onto Maple Street and then down the road?
Chad, do you have your?
Yeah, I'm bringing it back up. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, just if that looks like, well, you have snow storage over by the dumpster as well, which I suspect will run down the drive. But the that westerly corner of the property at the end of the parking lot at the Hammerhead.
Right up here. Yep.
Yeah. Am I to assume that? Because there's no page that shows us the topography. Will that all run back down through the parking lot, or is that going to dump out onto Maple Street and run down across the drive, like the entrance? Or
yeah, the plan is that this area here will drain in this direction and be captured by the catch basin and go this way. Okay. We can add some spot shots to the grading. And which will further clarify that concern. That's certainly not a problem. We'd be happy to do that.
No, I'm just curious as to which way it was flowing at that end. The other question I had was about, and this may be very minor, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman. When I was looking through the legends, it shows that double line on the driveway on the easterly side there, the southeastern side. That it says that it's curbing. So it was a good question by Mr. Council Boyd, if that was curbing or not. I don't know if we should change that to reflect it saying a shoulder or not, rather than curb line. But it says 1 foot shoulder. Is that an elevated shoulder or is that a drop off?
It's just, it's really, so the shoulder is it's a 4% grade, so it just breaks away from the pavement just slightly. But it really supports the edge of the traveled surface, so that you don't have failure of the traveled surface on the edge. That's all that is. It's standard construction practice. The curb line, so I can just zoom in here and give you and you're right, it's not a lot different, so I can understand the confusion, and that's why we typically would label that. The curbing is, adjacent to the sidewalk up here. The two lines are a little bit closer together, and then the shoulder is wider than the curbing. The curbing. Curbing's about a half a foot in width, and the shoulder is about a foot. We can certainly, add some labels or add that to the legend for clarification purposes. That's not a problem.
Makes sense.
I was just thinking that it was all curbing. That's why it didn't make sense to me that your drainage was going to work. Just to clarify on my last question, so that's an actual a 4% drop off in grade on that shoulder?
Well, it's not a drop off. I mean, 4% is pretty flat, really. I mean, over 1 foot, it's just a tenth. It's a very small drop from the travel surface.
Right. So there's no berm per se. It's either flat or it goes downhill.
Correct. Yeah. It breaks away. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Neil. And Nelson, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, a couple of questions. A couple of them have been picked up by these guys, and thank you. I wanted to ask about that sign. Just clarify for me the sign, the existing sign, the oval sign that's up in front on Route 3. That one's going away. Yeah, the one up in that region.
Right, this location here.
That one there, yeah.
I do believe that sign is going away.
Okay, it looks like it's still there by the plan, so that's why I asked. The plan should say to be removed or something if you wanted to show it, but is that's the intent?
Yes, the sign. I mean, we want to reserve the right to, if we can't get the sign to work in this location, I guess I would just say we may utilize that existing sign with our new sign. But I think it's safe to say the signs for this project, as it relates to the project sign, is going to be handled separately with a separate submission to the town.
Yeah, I think that last point is the one we should all take under advisement, is that sign locations and dimensions and those sorts of things are not elements of a site plan review. They're a separate submission to the town.
The location, I think, can be.
It's always something we've asked about on projects and have some curiosity about. I don't know whether it's an element that we approve or disapprove, but anyway.
I like his suggestion of putting it in the southeast corner. That I think is an improvement and serves better his site. So,
yeah, I think that makes sense too. Although Tim's got some need to make sure it complies with certain regulations or achieve some variances in order to do that, which makes some sense. Other comments or questions by members of the board?
Yeah, one more thing. I wasn't satisfied with Mr. Bannon's explanation of why no sidewalk, because there's one on the other side of the Daniel Webster Highway. That's not an easy highway to get back and forth across. You do have a sidewalk on the east side of Daniel Webster Highway, south of this property, the property that was redeveloped to the old Maddens, and the sidewalk ends there. And I think it should extend on up toward the center of Reed's Ferry Village and make it a walking connection all the way up. So I'm not in favor of no sidewalk, let's put it that way.
Thank you for that comment. I had not, well said with respect to DW Highway is not particularly easy to cross in that area. I don't know where the nearest crosswalk is. I hadn't offered my own 2 cents on any of the input in that, but the one thing that I was planning to say when my turn came was that I support your view of the sidewalk. We'll see what the rest of the board thinks as we approach that. Chad, do you want to speak to your waiver request?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. I would like to just state, as far as the side walk goes, that I did, we did kind of review the side. I know the sidewalks have been a discussion with the planning board in the past on other sites, and we did review this to some length with the owner, and they would be interested in trying to work with DOT on trying to permit a crosswalk, but they really would prefer not to construct a sidewalk along the frontage of the site. There's nothing to the north, as I stated, east, as I stated previously. So we're hoping the board would be sensitive to that. As it relates to the waiver, we did submit a waiver request for section 3.11 I1 of the site plan regulations, which establishes the requirements for interior parking lot landscaping. That particular section states that when a parking lot is situated on the side of a building, it shall be subject to 8% interior landscaping requirement. I did review with staff how that should be calculated, if you calculate that using just the parking area or if you use the access aisles. And we were able to determine this afternoon that when you calculate the landscape requirement, you're supposed to use the whole parking lot. So access aisle, parking spaces, everything. When you take a look at that for this project, it's about 6,500 square feet. That equates to about 544 square feet of interior landscaping requirements. Just to put that in perspective, a parking space is about 162 square feet. So this landscaping requirement would essentially need to be 9 additional parking spaces that would be landscaped.
Chad, can I challenge your math there?
You can challenge my math, certainly.
544 square feet of landscaping would be something like 3.5, a little over 3 parking spaces at 162 square feet.
Yeah, you're right. It would be 3.5 parking spaces. I'm sorry. Pulled this together relatively quickly this afternoon.
Not one among us hasn't done something exactly like that, so no criticism from me. Tim has a hand up.
To go along with Chad's request for the waiver, that requirement for internal parking lot landscaping is really intended for new development, where we're talking about redevelopment of an old historic site here. It's not the intent of, at least from my perspective, it's not the intent of the regulation to require additional space to be taken up by paving and landscaping, given the constraints that we have with the size of this lot. I do not have any particular issue if the board were to support the waiver.
Thank you, Tim. I don't disagree with the waiver either. I just couldn't pass up the math error.
Thanks a lot. Well, with that said, I think Tim kind of rounded off my request, and my client is willing to take the landscaping that would be required on the interior of the parking and apply that along the perimeter of the parking. So there would still be an equivalent amount of landscaping on site. So that concludes.
We're perfectly fine with that.
Our waiver request for this section.
Do any members of the board have questions about the waiver request? No, I see none. Before we vote on the waiver request, let's do the public hearing, just in case a member of the public wishes to weigh in on that piece of our deliberations as well. And I don't know whether there is anybody, but let's do that. Are there any abutters or interested citizens who wish to weigh in and offer the board some considerations on this project? while we see if anybody is interested, the email that we received with the wonderful photograph of the building from back in its history also did indicate support. And so that is an email from Rick Price. As a direct abutter to the subject property, I'm very much in favor as to the future use of this building. One question I have right now regards to parking. Would 20 spaces be enough? How many employees are expected? I realize not all residents would drive, but they would have visitors. As a historian, I'm pleased by the Gordon name being resurrected to the community, much nicer than something like Shady Pines. I am further pleased by the buyer's intention of restoring the building to what it once was and will again be an asset to the neighborhood. Perhaps the attached picture dated 1912 will serve as a guide or at least be of interest. Sincerely, Rick Price, 6 Pleasant Street. And so that is public testimony that is entered into the record along with the 1912 photograph, which to my eye looks like the southwesterly section of the existing building.
That would be correct, Mr. Chairman.
So with that in mind, are there any other abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in? If you're on the telephone and you're trying to do so, I believe *9 is the instructions to raise your hand.
That's correct.
Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and return to the board's discussion and deliberations. What's the will of the board with respect to the waiver request, which is to not require landscaping to the interior of the parking area for the reasons the applicant discussed and the staff concurred with?
Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the waiver request on the basis that, particularly what Mr. Thompson said, it's not meant to be for an existing building that's being rehabbed. That would normally be for a brand new construction. So I propose that the waiver will not
Specific circumstances?
the circumstances of the site mean that the waiver will carry out the general intent.
Second.
Motion and a second to grant the waiver. Motion by Alistair, second by Nelson Disco. Any discussion? Then let's do a roll call vote. Alistair, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Councillor Boyd.
Boyd votes aye.
Neil Anketel.
I vote in favor.
Nelson Disco.
Aye.
Bob Best votes aye too. 5-0-0 to grant the waiver. Does the board have any general discussion about potentially final disposition of the application? Tim, please, yes.
I think Chad may have forgotten he had a question regarding, I believe, the building elevations. Is that what your clarification was regarding, Chad?
Yes, and thank you. I actually was going to try to interject before we went to any kind of motion.
Just to, the comment from Robert's memo indicates that we need to have the building elevations per the requirements of the regulations. Those do not need to be specific architectural renderings. They just need to be sufficient enough to indicate to the person who's looking at the plans what the view of the building from the various elevation directions.
Not sure what the difference is between that and architectural, but if the applicant can find a difference, good for them.
Well, I think I'll let Chad, but I think it's regarding the fact that DES still needs to go through and do some permitting on this particular project. Not DES, excuse me, DHHS. With this being elderly, with this being an assisted living, and there may need to be some particular modifications in the final disposition that would associate with the building permit specifically. But for purposes of the site plan, it need not be building permit level of detail.
Makes sense to me.
Right. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify and confirm what Mr. Thompson said, that the goal, if it can be done conceptually with a sketch, then we don't have any issues because that would fit within the 6-month time period of the conditional approval time frame. Architectural plans, ideally with a site like this, they would be done once and kind of collaboratively through a review with the Department of Health and Human Services at the state level. And under the circumstances of COVID and timeframes and stuff, there was some concern with that maybe not being able to be accomplished within a 6-month time period. So we just wanted clarification. If it can be a conceptual rendering or a sketch, then we are okay with that comment. If it had to be architectural plans, then we were going to ask that it be attached to the building permit process. Certainly the client has every intention of this being done in an architecturally pleasing way, as has been mentioned before in many of the comments. The goal here is really to kind of reestablish the historic values on this project. So, this elevator tower and the enclosure of the breezeway will be done, in a careful manner. But we just want to have some clarification for the record. Thank you.
Alternatively, the 6-month time frame for conditions is something the board and I would have no issue if there are concerns with the state permitting process of going to from 6 to 12 months to allow that additional time given the current circumstances, if that is helpful to the applicant.
Yeah, I think both of those solutions in parallel are actually more than reasonable and warranted, to both offer the 12 months and to specify that the elevations are conceptual in nature, if that works. Further discussion by the board?
Yeah, I'd just like to, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something in the discussion about the sidewalks.
There hasn't been any decision made yet.
I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't think so. We were talking about it, but then we got sidetracked again, I think.
As a reminder to the board, the new regulations do not require a waiver to not provide the sidewalk. The provision of a sidewalk is at board's discretion. So if you choose to impose one, you have the authority to do so under the current regulations.
Yep. And procedurally, that would, I would imagine, occur as a part of the main motion to grant approval.
Correct.
Plus the condition that a sidewalk be added along DW Highway, if that's the will of the board. Neil, did you have substantive discussion about sidewalk or an opinion one way or another?
I do. I guess my opinion would be is I guess I didn't quite see where on the plan you proposed to put sidewalk.
Sure. The applicant hasn't proposed it at all and opposes it. Nelson had suggested that along DW Highway, which would connect with their abutting property on the other side of Maple Street, which has a sidewalk that we required to be installed when that 4-unit commercial development that has the restaurant and the dentist and the spa in it. We required that they build a sidewalk. This is the abutting parcel to the north, and so it would be a continuation of that, and also be a part of the general nature of that Reed's Ferry Village, for which sidewalks are generally supported.
So then on the print, the applicant didn't propose to put any sidewalks on Pleasant or Maple?
Correct.
Okay. I thought I heard him say that they did, and that's why I have a little bit of confusion there.
Those were internal sidewalks within the site.
Within the site. That's what I must have heard then. In regards to connectivity to the existing sidewalk on the north side of the Daniel Webster Highway, I think it might be important to entertain the thought of having a crosswalk at least put in to connect to that sidewalk across the DW Highway. I don't know what would be involved in that, but I mean, I can imagine people, I don't know how the age group of this facility, but I imagine going for a walk is going to be part of their maybe daily activity. They can access a lot of it through the back, the back streets to get where they need to go. But if they're going to be cutting across the DW Highway to go to Shaw's or to go to Charlie's up the street, I think it's, either a sidewalk on the same side or just at least to connect it to, connectivity to the other side is important.
I don't disagree with the value of necessarily having a crosswalk for lots of reasons, but I don't necessarily think that the applicant's residents would be making a particularly high use of it. Typically, assisted living residents don't get around that much.
Okay.
But the community does and the neighborhood does, and there's some reason to get there. I don't know what's involved with doing a crosswalk across Daniel Webster Highway. You'd have to select a location for it, and you've got a red light to the north at Bedford Road and to the south at Shaw's, and it's not so easy. Nelson, Nelson's urgently trying to get my attention here.
I just wanted to make sure my opinion was heard and that.
I made a mistake. I was thinking there was a crosswalk at Pine Street, which is the next block south, but that's not true. It's further down at Rainbow Avenue. So it is a little ways to the crosswalk, and either that or go up to Reed's Ferry Village, which is Bedford. Those are the two crossings. I'm sorry, I was thinking it was in the wrong place until I was thinking it was in another place when I was waving my hand frantically.
Yeah, and again, I don't putting a crosswalk and getting the state's permission to put a crosswalk across DW Highway, and then determining whether it's a matter of sidewalks. It's hard. Yeah.
This is not state jurisdiction. This is within the urban compact.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's certainly simpler when it's under town control. But there's also questions of exactly what is required of a crosswalk, whether it's one that is simply designated on the ground and a sign that says the cars have to stop, or whether there's some flashing light that says pedestrians will cross here and the cars have to do their thing, or whether you'd do a signalized some kind of traffic must stop kind of thing.
Well, if there can be any kind of discussion when it comes up with any of the other departments in town, that might be an option.
I suspect that as much as it might seem to be the lesser requirement compared to a sidewalk, I'm betting it's actually a whole lot more trouble than doing a sidewalk.
Okay.
Nelson, you had a thought?
Probably warrants that would be necessary, just like for traffic warrants to build a sidewalk. Normal practice, Neil. And I don't know what they are. So.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that either to say what kind of study or information the town would need to know whether where and when to put a crosswalk. Anyway, I think that section of Reed's Ferry Village is where there is probably the most walkability in town, and encouraging the continued development of that as you have the opportunity to do so is important. I do get that the applicant only has one abutter with a sidewalk, but more than we've seen in a lot of applications. And maybe the next one will be the next one. Does anybody else have comments or questions about the application in general or sidewalks? Then it's appropriate for the board to consider what action.
Chad does have his hand raised, I believe, for
I'm sorry, Chad.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, the topic of the sidewalk is a difficult one. It's certainly something that I know the board has been, evaluating on many sites throughout town. There's just, with this particular project, there's so much investment in the restoration of the building and the landscaping and the features on the site that if there's any way that the board, could allow us to utilize the existing sidewalk on the other side of the road, I mean, we'd be happy to, to entertain or try to get a crosswalk permitted. But it is a significant cost, especially, if you have to contemplate, curbing and any kind of drainage work along, Daniel Webster Highway. It gets very cost prohibitive, and it's something that I just hope the board can, not take too lightly here. We don't have any sidewalks to the north. I think that there are sidewalks in the area. A crosswalk could provide connectivity to the existing sidewalk or for the existing sidewalk on the I guess it would be the northwest side. We could do something across Maple Street and then across Daniel Webster Highway, but and we would have to look into that, closer and see if that works. But it's a big burden here. There's a lot of focus on rehabbing the building and restoring, other features of this site that this is going to take away from that on some level.
Understood. I understand your arguments. Other comments or questions by members of the board? Seeing none, then what is the will of the board?
All right. Seeing the will of the board.
Will of the board is quiet. What's up? What's up, Neil? What do you got in mind? Or you?
No, I was just thinking that after thinking about it being an assisted living housing, it would probably less likely that they'd be out and about walking around.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
But I don't know. That's all I was just thinking.
Nelson, you were leaning forward?
I was ready to make a motion to approve this site plan with the addition of a sidewalk along Route 3.
Is there a second for Nelson's motion? I'll second it for discussion purposes if nobody else will. I support it for the reasons that we discussed. I understand what the applicant's view is. This is not one where the site has slopes or impediments to building a sidewalk. It doesn't make it necessarily cheap to do it, but it's about as amenable as you can get. It's in a high priority area. It connects to other sidewalks, and it's an important part of the town. That's why I would support it. Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are two crosswalks along DW Highway in this area. To the north, you have crosswalks at Bedford and DW at the gun shop and at Walgreens. And then you have it to the south by Dunkin' Donuts and Tractor Supply at Front Street and DW. There are no other crosswalks in between. As it relates to sidewalks, you get on the easterly side of DW. To the north of the proposed location, you have a sidewalk at Walgreens. You have nothing in between from Merrimack Meadows down to where the old Madden site is, and then traveling southerly on the easterly side past Madden's, you have nothing going all the way down to Babusak Lake Road. You have no sidewalks. The connectivity exists on the westerly side of Daniel Webster Highway. You have a better chance of developing sidewalk connectivity on the westerly side based on the type of businesses that you have at those particular locations than what you have on the easterly side. I would suggest that it may be prudent to consider asking the applicant to put a crosswalk at Maple Street accessing Shaw's, because I think there are people that are down in the particular neighborhoods along Front, Maple, and Pine Streets that may want the opportunity to walk up the street and be able to cross the street safely there, being able to walk and go to Shaw's, whether it be to get a gallon of milk or what have you, or to make the right and head up to the Episcopal Church. So to me, a crosswalk at that location makes more sense than adding a sidewalk to this particular location. And then one last thing, because I have the benefit of Google Maps, you got a tree right in front of the property on the edge of the road that's going to have to come down in order for them to construct. And there's also a chance that it may impact a utility pole that sits at the corner of DW and Maple Street. So the way that I'm looking at it, those are additional burdens that we may be imposing upon the applicant just to satisfy the desire to construct a stretch of sidewalk on that side of the road where, quite honestly, I don't think you're going to have connectivity in our lifetime or our grandchildren's lifetime. I think you have a better opportunity to connect the west side of DW, which makes more sense, which allows people, like I said, to go to the Episcopal Church, or they could go up to Access, or they can access Bedford Road and travel westward up over the bridge to head down Bedford Road into some of the other neighborhoods there. Yep. So I would be opposed to this motion with the addition of adding a sidewalk. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Bill. And I think that you make some good points in terms of what utility there might be from a crosswalk where the Shaw's Plaza begins and that sort of thing. However, that would be an offsite improvement for this, and those aren't our alternatives that are before us. We don't have the option to tell this applicant to do one or the other. It's either build a sidewalk or don't. In terms of what's available to us as we review this. It does connect to other sidewalk. And as you get down towards the flats and all of that, you've got kind of that continuous apron of pavement along the side of the road that, I don't know, you don't call it a sidewalk because it doesn't really have a delineation of a sidewalk, but it's like 300 feet of pavement abutting the highway for parking lot on into the Reed's Ferry Market and all the way up to Depot Street. And then sidewalks a little bit north of Depot Street where the thing is. So anyway, you make valid points. I think that sort of on balance, I still am where I am, but I don't know as I'm listening to people's comments, whether that vote goes much further than 2 to something or other. Potentially. So other comments on the main motion, which is to grant conditional final approval with the addition of a sidewalk. Tim.
My other question is whether or not the board wanted that to be a 12-month period for the conditions of approval.
I have no objection to that if it helps the applicant to do so.
Yeah.
May I speak, Mr. Chairman? I know you're in the middle of something, but
no, please,
as it relates to both topics.
Please, on any topic you like.
We would request that the time frame be modified to 12 months. That would work out well with the anticipated time frame on the state end. As it relates to the sidewalk topic, I think everybody understands my client's position. Our preference would be to try to work with the town on a crosswalk. We would certainly be willing to do that. If the board for some reason feels that a sidewalk is absolutely necessary along the front of this project, we would ask that they consider us to allow us to build it internally so that we don't have to, build a curb along Daniel Webster Highway, and that we can be more sensitive to some of the existing landscaping and utility locations.
So my understanding of our sidewalk standards is that it can be somewhat internal with a grass strip between the edge of the road and the sidewalk. I don't know how far internal you were thinking to go, but they're not required to be abutting the edge of the roadway. And everything that we were told from Nashua Regional Planning Commission says that they work better when you separate them from the roadway because it's much more comfortable to walk on a sidewalk that isn't 6 inches from the traffic lane.
From a terminology standpoint, Public Works would consider a sidewalk to be within the public right-of-way. If we were to do it internal to the property with an easement, we'd consider it a pedestrian pathway.
Right. And we would, and don't get me wrong, our preference is to not go down this path, but in the interest of making sure that, if the decision's made to continue in this, direction with the motion, that it would be internal. I think the town's detail requires a curb along the road. So we would be looking for no curb. And we're not looking to come far into the site, but certainly we would try to avoid any of the, mature trees along Daniel Webster Highway and utility poles. I mean, those are very costly to have to move or relocate. So we would be looking for some flexibility as it relates to that.
Sure. My personal opinion is that that's fine to be internal to avoid the utility poles and the trees. Looking at the sort of street view version of this, the one tree that's on the edge of pavement is one that if you had to put a sidewalk there, there's not enough room to get around it. I mean, there's literally inches from the tree to the edge of pavement. However, that probably means that tree is already causing some headaches that may be the demise of that tree eventually anyway, being that close to the travelway. My 2 cents is that if the sidewalk was separated from the roadway a short distance with some grass strip, that's not only acceptable, but even better. That's my 2 cents.
As the mover, my motion would include all of that, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with your analysis of that.
I offered the second, so I also agree with that.
Yeah.
Further discussion on the motion? Okay, then let's do a roll call vote. Alistair, how do you vote?
I vote aye, Mr. Chairman.
Bill Boyd, how do you vote?
I vote nay.
Neil Ankadel, how do you vote?
I'd vote nay.
Nelson Disco, how do you vote?
Aye.
I also vote aye. So that's 3-2 to grant conditional final approval subject to a sidewalk with the distinctions that we've had discussed here tonight and the addition of a 12-month time frame to meet conditions of approval. All right. Any other business on this application, Tim?
No.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chad.
Chad, again, thank you. Really excited for this project. This is awesome. So
I'll share that with my client. Thank you so much.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Absolutely. Item 5 on the agenda is Bowers Landing of Merrimack 2 LLC as the applicant and owner review for acceptance and consideration of a site plan to construct 72 multifamily residential units in phase 7 of the Harris Pond planned unit development. The parcel is located off Bowers Landing Drive in the I-1 Industrial and Aquifer Conservation Districts, tax map 1D lot 1-4, case planning board 2020-16. Tim, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you probably remember, this project was actually before you several months ago, was accepted as complete and had started in the public hearing process. After that had started, we did discover after contacts from some residential abutters that there was a notice error necessitating that this process be started anew, meaning that all of the decisions the board had made on that initial submission are moot, and we are back to square one with needing to go through application acceptance and the public hearing at this stage. The property in question for Bowers Landing is pretty familiar to the board. The applicant has been before the board several times in the last few years, making amendments to phases of the development. Many of you may be aware that going back to around 2005 or so, this initially was approved as a totally multifamily development comprised of a mix of townhouses and multifamily buildings. Over the course of the last several years, the applicant has modified those phases and gone forward with several phases of single unit condominium development with the applicant has built basically single family homes in a condominium style where they all share the same property and share common land where the houses are located. This is essentially the final phase of that development. This portion of the project has always been considered for 72 units of multifamily residential. This application for an amendment to that phase is essentially to reorient and reposition the buildings from where they were originally approved back in 2005. The applicant has submitted additional information today, minor traffic analysis, which was the one item that staff was waiting for in order to make a recommendation on a completeness. That having been submitted, the staff does support acceptance of the application here tonight, as well as the board moving forward to a decision on the project. I know that Matt Peterson from Keach is here, and I'm sure he'll be able to do a recap on the project for those that may or may not remember what happened earlier this year.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for that. And Matt, are you?
I am here, but my video is not being allowed, so I'm not sure if that matters or not. But
can we turn on Matt's video or give him permission to do that?
All right. can share, so that's good. We'll start with this.
Okay.
Can you guys see? Oh, there we go. Yep. So you can see the plan now, I assume?
Yep, and you.
Excellent. Look at that. All right. Good evening. Matt Peterson with Keach Nordstrom Associates. Glad to be in front of you guys here tonight. I'm very happy to have just listened to that whole last application and have you guys get to the end that you did, because in 30 days, I'm going to be submitting an application at 406 DW Highway that has the sidewalk off of the main dragway and off a little bit. So we'll see if you like it at that point, but at least I got to hear your input tonight.
Very good. I look forward to hearing it.
As Tim just said, this is the existing Bowers Landing Drive. Just to give everybody an overview, out at the main highway here, we have the Dunkin' Donuts. We come into the site with our clubhouse. We have our garden style units here, 4 of them. And then we come back to the next phase. The second phase was these townhouses. Then I permitted these single families about almost 10 years ago, I think now, maybe 8 years ago. And then we were in front of you guys probably 2 years ago now for this phase here that is currently under construction out there. As you said, this was just a reorientation of the 3 proposed buildings that we were looking at. We were here in front of you at August 18th, 2020.
Matt, would it mess you up if I asked you a question already?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Can you bring back the satellite that you were just showing? Where is the phase we're talking about today going to be?
It's going to be right up in here is one of the buildings. And then the other building is right here. The other 2 buildings are right in here.
Beautiful. That's what I wanted. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting you.
No worries. As I said, we were here on August 18, 2020. I kind of gave an overview of the whole project. I'm briefly going to go over that, and I'm going to hit upon the comments. I've got 6 of them that were from that meeting that were comments to be asked about, and then I'll just kind of open it up. I know there's a few abutters that have brought some concerns to the board. Just so the board understands the abutter notification, I had notified the association. Unfortunately, the association hasn't been changed over from the current owners to an association because they didn't have one yet. And they're on site 3 days a week, but they didn't notify everybody with the correct way. So that's why we just pulled it back, do it correctly here. Not trying to get away with anything, just kind of happened. So 3 buildings, 4 stories, 72 units, all of the internal parking lot, all of the landscaping. I think on this plan here, we're looking at 87 new trees on site. I learned my lesson the other day on your internal and external landscaping, and you guys require a lot of trees around parking lots. I like it. With that, the couple things that we had, the last one was, could we continue, again, back to sidewalk concerns. The plan that you saw in August had the sidewalk coming down Bowers and ending at this point here. I am proposing to continue it up to this point here and then continue it to the property line, which puts us into the other development that's there. On this side here, once you get into this development, is all those carports and stuff. There's not the ability to continue a sidewalk at that point, but this connects it all the way through to the other one. Then on the, Nelson asked about connecting it up the ramp here. Just so you know, this one over here is a 5-foot sidewalk that matches with what you have coming down. I would like to propose a 4-foot sidewalk. That was my compromise coming up this road here. If you take a look at the plan set, as I'd gone through on August 18th, we're dealing with some grades on both sides of this sidewalk, on this access road here. Handicap ramp is 36 inches, so I'm over that. I feel that 4-foot sidewalk was more than adequate to, bring it up the side here. This doesn't show it right here on this plan here. This is still the old plans. We haven't resubmitted everything yet to staff and stuff like that. But I felt that that would, be able to get the people out the door to the sidewalk, across to a sidewalk, and down to wherever they want to go throughout the site.
Yep.
The next one was the landscaping around the detention basin. We didn't have any extra landscaping down here. So as you know, we have some walking paths around the detention basins that we also added benches in that we had talked about the last hearing. So, benches here. So I added some landscaping around, some landscaping as you come down the road and around to kind of feed in the look as you went down Bowers Landing Drive. One of the other questions that was brought up was what was the slope of this road coming in? This road is at 4% coming up, so it's nothing major on that. Again, a handicap ramp's about 8%. And then one of the questions was related to the views. So from if you were in this building here, what kind of would be the view on that? So the best I could do, this building here sits at 235.50. The existing grade is right here is I think that's the 230. Yeah, the 230 contour that's there. So this is 232, 236. So pretty much existing grade right in the middle of the building. Well, that doesn't zoom in. All right. So with the existing grade of the building at 235.5, if you take the existing grade of the trees, I assume they're about 30 to 60 foot trees. Throughout the site, the average is about 208 because it drops off in both directions everywhere you go. So you're talking an elevation of about 265.5 to 285.5. If you assume the elevation of the fourth floor at about 275, it's anywhere from 269 to 278, depending on where you are. But if you use 275, then you're basically saying that that floor is going to be at the top of, the trees on site there. The trees are about the height of it. And I think that's what Bill Boyd was asking at that point last week, was that, where approximately was that elevation? And I think, you're going to be right about the top of the trees as you go there. Now, from the main road, looking in here, these trees are all in front there, and here's the first of the 4 buildings. So you're not going to see any of this from Daniel Webster Highway, if that was your question from it. But I think it was more so, would you be looking over the tops of those 4 that are right here? So whether you'd be looking over these here. So this unit will sit up here, and yes, they will be pretty close to the tops, looking at the roofs of these here. I'm not sure if they'd see all the way to the highway or not, but there'll be potentially some views up there. One of the last things that I found is the Conservation Commission. They had asked that I remove a note about phosphorus. I had a hard time finding it. I finally did. It was in our landscape notes. And it was this one right here, and I'm just going to remove that off the plan per my Conservation Commission meeting with them. So that would be in the next submittal to the town.
So they don't want you to say only low phosphate fertilizers will be used?
Yeah, they didn't want to use it at all, is what they had said. They had said, find the note that says phosphorus. Maybe they didn't realize it said only low. I'll clarify with staff and stuff like that to make sure. But
are they looking for a requirement that we require you have no fertilizer use on site?
I think that's where they were going with it, yes.
I don't know that we've been that tough on a restriction for fertilizer without there being an abutting water body or something like that.
Okay, all right. It's a minor thing with just one of their comments from COMCOM to address. And then lastly, per the previous approval, we are required to build a fence all the way down Bowers. Down here, we've actually extended a little bit further. It's not finished yet, but it's being extended a little further. So this is the fence that's going up. I just got these pictures today. So it's literally, this is under construction now, as you all know. And these homes sit down about 8 feet plus or minus from the road. So as you see, the slope comes up. This would be kind of from their view. There's 5 to 6 trees we required on their previous application to submit up at the top there too, behind the fence there.
Okay.
So again, it's getting late. I've already presented this a few times. I'll kind of open it up for the butters and you guys, and I'll do the best I can to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Board members, as before, the first question before us is determining whether the application is complete and contains sufficient information to allow us to make an informed decision. Does anyone have any questions that would help you or aid you in resolving that question? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we have sufficient information tonight for us to make a final determination on this proposal.
Seconded.
Motion by Alistair Milne, second by Councillor Boyd to find the application complete. If there's no further discussion on that subject, Alistair Milne, how do you vote?
I vote aye, Mr. Chairman.
Bill Boyd?
Boyd votes aye.
Neil Anketell?
Vote in favor of the motion.
Nelson Disco?
Aye.
Bob Best votes aye as well, 5-0-0 to find the application complete. Does the board have general questions or discussion about the application? My only first comment is, Matt, thank you for responding to the things we discussed last time. It seems like you paid attention to them very well and very close detail. Bill, what is your comment?
Just two questions. Thank you for your presentation, Matt, and answering my question. I really appreciate it. So the buffer of the trees is going to be protected, and that's duly noted. My question to you is there on either site, whether at building 1 or where building 2 and building 3 is, does it sit on ledge? And if so, do you anticipate doing any blasting? And if so, to what extent?
So I asked that question today and was brought, I've kind of worked on 2 or 3 phases here. Every single house, every single townhouse, every single structure we put in has pretty much had to be blasted. So yes, there will be blasting on this site. The reason for bringing the road in at this location here and coming up at the 4% was to minimize that blasting as I got up to this point here, instead of just knocking this whole thing down and bringing it down to grade and creating a crushing operation that's there. So yes, there will be continued blasting, just like there has been on every single home that we've had to do out here. This site has been, every piece has been ledge.
So Matt, thanks. Thank you for your answer. I guess the question would be the follow-up, just as an ancillary piece to Tim. Do we need to require the applicant to, we did it with MPO a long time ago where we sent the blast around to the certain neighborhoods. They took pictures of houses that were near where the blasting was going to occur. And then there was follow-up as to whether there was particular damage. Do we have, I forget what the process is, but do we have any concern in that regard where we have to ask the applicant to do that as it relates to the people that the people that live down in I believe, what is it, Toby Circle, which is just south of there?
The town's blasting requirements are administered by the fire department, and all of those requirements for pre-blast survey notification is all included in our current regulations.
Okay, pre-blast survey, that's what I was looking for. So if people are going to be impacted, that there will be a survey done. Is that fair to say?
If they follow the regulations, yes.
Okay,
yeah, I printed out your regulations. They're 19 pages long today, and we hired main drilling and blasting, so we're not doing this ourselves or anything like that.
Main drilling is one of the best, and I appreciate that.
Yep.
Last question, Matt. I'm going to work off of, actually, you know what? Let me do this. Off of the original plan set that you gave us on page sheet 4, which is the grading plan.
Yep.
And you had suggested that you're going to run a 4-foot sidewalk from the base of Bowers Landing Road up to the top. So it's one way in, it's one way out. At the top of the hill, where you have the proposed connectivity, are you proposing to put a crosswalk and a stop sign exactly right where your cursor is? Are you proposing to put a crosswalk and a stop sign at that location?
So the only thing when I was giving my presentation a few minutes ago, this is the stop bar and stop sign, but we should just paint in a little crosswalk here.
Perfect.
Perfect. And that's something we would do.
Okay, perfect. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Matt.
Excellent. Matt, thank you. Other comments or questions? If there's none, then let us open the public hearing and get any testimony that may be from abutters, and also identify or potentially read into the record the various written correspondences that we've gotten. The only reason for sort of qualifying whether we would summarize or read them, it just depends on what the length is, and making sure the board gets the important focus of that. Are there any abutters on the phone who wish to weigh in and offer the board some thoughts? *9 is the correct way to do that. And I see that the phone number ending in 535 has raised hands. That's Jaron Slattery. Please unmute yourself and introduce yourself with your name and address, and then provide the board with the information you'd like us to consider. Does he require any assistance from us to unmute?
I'm trying to unmute him right now.
I just tried. I have not been able to unmute it at this point.
Jaron, are you able to do that? I don't know what the command is on the phone.
This is Jaron speaking now. I'm actually on for the next case for the Edgebrook Heights. That number you reference is not me.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know who that may be.
All right, that may be another individual that just happens to have a number that ends in 535. He's still got a hand raised, but is still muted.
Do we want to try *6 to unmute? That might work.
All right, would the caller consider using the *6 function?
Hey.
It looks like you're unmuted.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Please introduce yourself and provide your address, and then whatever comments that you'd like the board to consider.
I will. My name is Pani Raj. That's Phani. Raj is my last name. I live in 52 Toby Circle. My question is, I think the staff mentioned something about a traffic management plan. I would like to hear more about what the estimate of increased traffic in Bowers Landing Drive would be, especially to Manchester Street. And is there any kind of access control gate being proposed for either end of the Bowers Landing Drive to control the traffic?
Excellent. Thank you for your comment or question. Let's take all of the comments from all of the abutters, and then we'll have the applicant address them. Are there any other abutters who wish to weigh in? Okay, let me review the written communications that we had received. The first that I have on my list is an email from Joyce Schwab, who is a resident of 55 Toby Circle, which she indicates directly faces the hill 3 lots down. Good morning. I'm not sure I'll be able to speak via phone, so I'm posting some questions now. Her first question: when did the plan first submit for 3 4-story apartment buildings? Meeting minutes on June 5th of 2018. It is envisioned the last 72 would probably match existing garden style units in a future application. It remains unclear at this time. When we purchased our home lots on the real estate office, the real estate office had a site plan which showed the left side of Bowers was for future development. No buildings were noted. Might have made a difference in choosing lots, so who knew apartments were going up and when? Will a buffer of trees be kept, or will it all be blasted away? If blasting the ledge, possible damage concern. Question or comment 3, is there a drawing rendition of how phase 7 will look with 4-story apartments on the hill? Thank you very much, Joyce Schwab. And the second one that I have is an email from Martha Furlong, who is at 45 Toby Circle. Her comment or submission says, what plans will be made to visually separate these new apartments that are directly behind from Toby Circle? The concern is the placement of the parking lot for the apartments and its lighting, which will directly shine towards Toby Circle. Can the parking lot be developed on the far side, Dunkin' Donuts, from Toby? Currently, any cars coming up Bowers Landing from Dunkin' side, headlights shine directly into my house, sunroom and bedroom. With a parking lot, I can only foresee more traffic and more lights. Thank you for your consideration, Martha Furlong. And the third email that I have is from John and Lise Linehan of 12 Toby Circle, who write, dear Chairperson, as residents of the ponds at Crown Point, we have several concerns regarding the above. There was considerable blasting needed to build the current units, which are still under construction. Will there be more blasting necessary for the building of these 72 units? If so, what precautions, remediations will be required for damages to current units? Current egress is through the parking lot of the garden-style apartments at the end of Bowers Landing Drive, posing safety concerns for those residents. Can the increased traffic from these additional 72 units be sustained from this exit and safety measures ensured? Bowers Landing Drive is barely wide enough for 2 vehicles passing at the same time now. Again, can safety be maintained for both vehicles and pedestrians? The other egress is Manchester Road, which is highly traveled at high rates of speed. Vision from the entrance exits to Bowers Landing Drive onto Manchester Road is obstructed and difficult to see. Additional traffic will only contribute to the likelihood of a major traffic accident. Item number 3, lastly, as many major problems have yet to be addressed and remedied by the builders during the current construction, there are significant worries that any new situations will also not be taken care of. The history of this builder is not addressing construction issues in a timely manner is of grave concern as well. Thank you for allowing us to address our thoughts on the above plan. Sincerely, John and Lise Linehan. Those are the ones that I have. Tim, do you have any other written comments?
I do not.
Okay. And there's no one else on the call who wishes to weigh in. So we'll close the public hearing. And Matt, I'll ask you to respond to those. But before you do that, I wanted to offer a couple of caveats to that. The questions about blasting, I think, have been addressed. And that is simply that blasting and so forth is not a planning board issue. It's a fire department issue where there's a blasting plan and about blasting regulations. That was not the case with the outlet mall because it was a conditional use permit, which changes the whole puzzle if people are wondering why we saw it then and we don't see it now. There's a handful of questions about when plans were changed to be whatever they had changed to be. I don't believe you need to address those to us because the answers to those don't weigh on any decision the planning board would take up. You would have the right to propose whatever you wish, whenever you wish, on your property, unless there'd been some commitment and a prior approval to do so. So with that in mind, would you address some of the traffic and headlights and parking lot locations and some of the safety considerations that were raised in those comments?
Yes, I can, Chairman. So starting with traffic first, this had a full-blown traffic study June 4th of 2002. At that time, the ITE manuals were using a 6th generation manual, a little bit different obviously than now. So what I did is I put together a traffic memo for the requirements here for tonight based on these 72 units and what they would generate. And then in conclusion, in my study, which will be reviewed by staff and by engineer, I compared that study to this one here. And what it yields is this. In the morning PM peak trips for 72 units, we're looking at 23 vehicles per hour is what that number would be for the AM peak coming out of here. Then the PM peak would be 30 vehicles per hour. So we're at the 23 and 30 for 72 units. When you had the 256 units, you had 115 cars coming out in the morning AM peak and 140 for the PM peak. So if you just do the percentages of 72 units divided by those numbers, you get that back in 2002, they would have been assuming that these 72 units would have generated for the morning peak 32.34 trips. We're now at 23. So it's almost 10 trips less over the last 15 years. And obviously people's habits have changed. And I'm pretty sure when the 11th manual come out, they'll probably be a lot different as well with what's happened here the last year. Again, in the PM peak at the 140, it would have said that our site was generating 39.37. Flash forward 15 years, the new regulations saying this development is going to create 30 trips. So what that tells me is that the improvements and everything that was put in place were over exaggerated by a factor of safety about 1.3 to 1.4 back in 02 from what they did here. So as everybody knows from this design and the layout, this is a through road that's connecting the two sites. The Dunkin' Donuts up at the front is going to create more traffic in the morning than I'm going to traffic from these 72 units that are here. So again, I understand the abutters' concerns when new stuff's coming in, but town required them to study all 256 at the time. It's just taken 14 years to build out. And again, staff make sure we check and make sure the boxes all make sense as we move forward. So again, this is what the numbers are saying for the design is reduction. Again, everything's in place out there. I've been out to this site now for 8 years or so, back and forth, and there's site distance at both access points and stuff like that we have. As far as the lighting plan, that was an interesting comment because my initial concern when I was laying these buildings out was that if I moved, let me just go to lighting, was that if I flipped this building over to this side here, they were going to be towering over the houses that were down here. I felt that leaving the distance, this actually is kind of in a hole right here, about 10 feet, then kind of comes up and then goes back down to this building here. This building's at 208, the detention pond's at 212, and then these people are back down at 203, 204. So it kind of goes up and then back down again. I really felt that this was the location to minimize it and again, leave the big green open space between the two. So that's why I like that. As far as lighting, really light lighting. I mean, even right underneath the light poles, 1.5, 1.9, 1.3. I think I've told this board over and over again, I really don't like lighting up the world. I've been doing this 25 years and hopefully won't, but we haven't been sued for not enough lighting anywhere yet to date. And I just don't see that you really need to light everything up. This, it has the points where people can see to get in the access to the building, but New Hampshire, try to keep the dark stars. Everything obviously is cutoffs and stuff like that as we come down.
Matt, can I ask you a question while we're on that subject? So the fence that you showed us in the photographs that are being built is further down the hill?
Right here.
In that area?
Ended right here, but they actually have told me they brought it across to here. I need to verify that, but this is what was approved right here on the previous application. So anybody for this site coming down, there's a 6-foot stockade fence, and then these homes are all 8 feet below that fence.
All right, so car headlights aren't going to get past the fence, and the gap between the fence, maybe the home that the writer was
maybe over in this location
addressed from, and we're not necessarily changing the fencing along Bowers Landing Drive. On the perimeter of your parking lot, is there landscaping or a low-level, 2-foot, 3-foot fence that might interrupt headlights that are leaving the parking lot?
I didn't do any fencing, but I did landscaping, heavy landscaping. I mean, I don't have a problem with extending this a little bit if that needs to make sure that it comes down here. The light stops with the fence. I have no problem making sure that this person's light would be stopped by the fence to extend it. I think they already did, but I just can't say that tonight.
Sure. I think that'd be a great solution to the existing problem for that applicant to be able to block that. I was thinking about making sure that the cars that were maneuvering around the parking lot for building 1 didn't face their headlights down the hill to people. Gotcha. And you talked about the elevation, and maybe the elevation solves the problem.
So 208, 210 is here, 208, 206. And then once I get into here, these ones here are 202, and then they drop down the hole here. They drop down 8 feet. I mean, I could throw some low shrubs along there just to fill it in where I didn't have it on the landscaping. But I do need some snow storage too, actually.
All right, I get what you're saying. Take a look at it and see what you can add that doesn't mess up your snow storage. Maybe they're further back away from the edge of pavement or something. Is that a walking path that's
right here? Yeah.
South of that? Maybe along that walking path or something where the headlights would be interrupted. If there was, it only looks like there's maybe 5 or 6 spaces in the middle of the parking lot where there isn't already a tree or shrub or something.
I can work something out with staff to make sure that parking headlights would be blocked at this location. Whether I burn this up, I might just add a foot of 2 feet of material here above their headlights. I could probably easily do that. Actually, I'd probably just do it with grading.
Okay. I think that would certainly help that abutter that was facing that issue or potentially worried about car headlights. Are the other 2 buildings, do they have any parking lot locations that would have that same effect of headlights from the parking lot aiming towards someone's home? Or
the good thing is all these are
other
turning
direction?
into the building. There's a fence on this side here. these guys are all coming down and then face the fence, so we're blocking it all there. So I think we did a good job at that point.
Okay, excellent. I know that there was some discussion about traffic and speed and things like that. And I know the trip numbers you talked about in terms of the updated traffic study. What's your sense of what's going on there with people either driving at a particular speed or choosing to go in different directions or having difficult visibility down Manchester Street?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I want to touch upon about I've had the advantage of been working with this client now for 8 years now and been out to the site on a regular basis. Steve Keach actually has one of his good friends that lives in the units there. So the statement that he doesn't take care of, I think he's done a really nice job over the years of building this out here. I haven't noticed anything from a speed standpoint. I mean, if anything, speed bumps or something if they want it, but I don't see a lot of traffic when I'm out there. But I'm there during the day. Obviously, I'm there from 10 to 2 or 3 and not necessarily at 5 or on Saturday or something like that. But I haven't noticed a cut through. It doesn't really make a lot of sense with Manchester Street having its access a lot easier up the road to come down to here to cut through. So I think most people are living there that are going through it.
What's the roadway width of Bowers Landing Road?
24 feet.
Okay. So it's certainly plenty of space for 2 cars to pass. That would be one of the widest 2-lane roads that we've got in town. Is it a private road or is it?
It is a private road.
So you guys are maintaining it and doing all plowing and all that kind of fun?
Yep.
Did we put salt restrictions on this parcel before?
That's one I could not answer because the road, I never did the actual main road, that private road.
You're in the Aquifer Conservation District, so it would be normal for us to require limited salt use.
Probably would have been predating the pay particular attention to the salt and sodium issues. As I mentioned, and I put up on the screen briefly, the initial approval for this project dates back to 2005.
Yeah, it certainly makes sense. And I'm reluctant to, and I was thinking the same thing with fertilizer when I saw what the Conservation Commission wanted, to have one phase of a 7-phase development have different requirements for fertilizer and salt use is really quite challenging to administer. But anyway, that's 2 cents. Let the board weigh in and say what you think. Does anyone tuned into various other questions that were raised in the abutters and citizens comments that haven't been addressed yet that they'd like to hear addressed? Okay.
I just add, Mr. Chairman, that the previous approved had that exact same number 7 note, and that's where it came from. So I was just copying from the old plan. So you're right. I mean, I'd want to keep it consistent as it goes through each phase.
Yeah. And usually that particular note is the one that is aimed at being environmentally friendly to avoid more potent doses of phosphate-laden fertilizers that would end up running off into some pond somewhere and causing the algae blooms. And the only other option to that would be to say no fertilizer, which again creates that weird dynamic on the property. Other comments or questions by members of the board? I don't see any. If there are no other comments or questions, what is the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, now that we have the minor traffic analysis, I make a recommendation that we grant conditional final approval to this application with the conditions in Robert Price's memo.
Is there a second for Alistair's motion?
I'll second.
Second by Neil Anketel. I saw Nelson's hand go up as well, but we'll count Neil. I think he was a little earlier. Okay, if there's no further comments to the motion to grant conditional final approval subject to the conditions in the memo, I don't believe we added any conditions here tonight, although a little bit of discussion about some landscaping and some effort to block car lights. I think we can count on the applicant to work with staff on those. If there's no further discussion, then let's do a roll call vote. Alistair, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Councilor Boyd, how do you vote?
Boyd votes aye.
Neil Anketel.
I vote aye.
Nelson Disco.
Aye.
Bob Best votes aye as well. 5-0-0 to grant conditional final approval to this application. All right. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your presentation.
Have a great night. See you soon.
You too. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Matt.
Absolutely. Okay. Item 6 on our agenda is Edgebrook Heights LLC and Wigston Properties LLC as the applicants and owners. It's review for consideration of an amendment to a previously approved mixed-use development conditional use permit. The parcels located at 1 Daniel Webster Highway in the I-1 Industrial Aquifer Conservation and Flood Hazard Conservation Districts. Tax map 1E, lot 41 and 42. Map 2E, lots 7 and 8. It's Case Planning Board 2020-28. Tim, is there anything that we need to know before we hear from the applicant? Your sound is not coming through.
Coming through.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Tim. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Getting a little static that comes through, but not much more of anything else.
Okay.
There you are. Gotcha.
This was originally approved back in 2014. The conditions of approval expired. They came back with a revised conditional use permit, which was approved and signed by the board last November on November 5th. What the applicant is now coming.
Now your sound died again. Did you move and unplug something or wiggle it around? But you're quiet there.
Yeah, we've lost all communication there.
Yeah, your screen's freezing too. See if turning off your video will allow your audio to work better.
He's not hearing you. Nope.
I can hear you. Are you hearing me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. I'll leave the video off for now. The particular portion of the project that is being sought for the amendment here is the area that had a 20,000 square foot commercial space, as well as a retail gas and convenience store. The applicant is looking to revise that to allow for self-storage use in that area.
Oh, after self-storage area, we lost you again.
I am going to leave the meeting and try to rejoin, but I would.
Okay. Go ahead and do that. Let's wait a minute to let Tim go through that process so we can get his introduction, and we'll go from there. Justin, are you able to monitor and let him in?
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on that just to see when he pops in here.
Do we want to take a quick recess, Mr.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break and let Neil do Tim do that, and we'll also all have the benefit of a couple of minutes here.
Thank you, Mr.
Don't forget to mute and stop video while you're taking a break. It was breaking up quite a bit.
No problem. This project, as you recall, dates back, probably going back to 2013, 2014 timeframe. This was the first of the 3 mixed-use conditional use permits that the town has now since approved. The conditions of approval were never met for that initial application. The applicant came back and just last year in November got final approval for the amended conditional use permit. They have now since also received approval for site plan for the initial 150 or so multi-family units, as well as the 76 units of elderly housing that was part of phase 1 of this project. Did I crap out again?
No.
Okay. I'm not seeing any motion on anybody else other than me. So the applicant is now before the board again to amend what are currently lots A and B, which as part of the approved conditional use permit are a retail convenience store, gas station, and 20,000 square feet of commercial space. The proposed amendment would replace those 2 different uses with approximately 53,000 square feet of self-storage facility. This would be the first step in moving forward with this process. The applicant has provided updates to all the relevant sections of the conditional use permit application to address this issue. Also would like to note that this proposed amendment does not propose any access to the existing driveway on the neighboring property to the north, which is the driveway for Huntsman and the former Nashua Corp, where Law Logistics currently is located, which was a relatively large part of the lawsuit and settlement agreement that was settled between this applicant and the abutters that was going to be resolved at time of site plan. With that being resolved and that not being proposed anymore, that is a significant change that I think would appease the abutters that entered into that settlement agreement. Lastly, we have had a chance to look through and evaluate. This does still meet all the criteria that the conditional use permit ordinance requires, and we believe that this is ready to move forward to the amendment tonight. So at this point, I would turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening. My name's Jason Lopez, Keach Nordstrom Associates. And with me this evening from Edgebrook Heights LLC and Wigston Properties LLC is Bernie Plant and Jaron Slarity. And also joining them, their attorney, Brad Westgate. Also on with us this evening is Gordon Welch of RC Holdings LLC. He will be the applicant for the future site plan for the self-storage facility. So we wanted him to participate in case the board members had any questions on, the future use of self-storage should the board approve this amendment this evening. So much of what I was going to present, Tim covered. So, as he stated, if I have the ability to share the screen, that might be a good start right off with the plans.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first, drop in on the Google Maps. We were just talking about Bowers Landing, right across the street, the Dunkin' Donuts. The lots we're talking about, A and B, are the old ball field and the parking lot. Let's see if I get to the plan here. So the original site plan or master plan.
Jason, the plan didn't come up. We're still looking at the satellite on our view.
Oh, okay. Give it another second here. Still nothing?
Still looking at the satellite view. I don't know if when you shared the screen, it just shared that one application or something. There you go.
There we go. Okay. So this is the original master plan. Lots A which proposed the 20,000 square feet of the commercial building, and then a little mini mart with 12 gas pumps on lot B. So what the future applicant would be looking to do is consolidate both those lots through the site plan approval process and do self-storage on both of those. Here's the Bennings Court is the new road that's going to, it's pretty much constructed at this point. That will go in to access all the elderly housing, the multifamily. There's another additional commercial lot at the end of the cul-de-sac. So that road is in place, utilities in, stubs going into this lot. So this is the proposal of what we are seeking the amendment for. It includes the climate control, non-climate controlled, single story, self-storage with the roll-up doors around the perimeter, no interior hallways. There is a small 1,200 square foot office we're proposing at the entrance. Gate out at the front, subsurface drainage, and we'll go through the full site plan approval process. In terms of, so on October 19th, we had a Zoom meeting with staff and introduced this concept to them, asked for some advice and direction on how to advance. They recommended that we file a formal application, and that's what we're here for this evening. Tim had mentioned that we had gone through, there was a previous book, a large book with many sections addressing the conditional use permit criteria. We've gone through just the pertinent sections and amended those. That booklet was provided. Within that, we updated, obviously, the new application, the abutters list, updated the narrative, provided an architectural rendering of the buildings, updated the plan, which you see up on the screen now. We did have an amendment to the fiscal impact analysis that was done, and we did a traffic memo due to the change. So while I'm here and I'm sharing my screen, see if I get to the rendering of the buildings. There we go. So this is actually another facility, rendering from another facility that Gordon is in process of. Obviously, the grades and the exact layout is going to change based on the site characteristics here. But to give you a general idea of what that office building is going to look like and what the self-storage buildings will look like.
Excellent.
So a little advice on this. We've got the CUP criteria that we should go through. There are 11 sections in that. 4 of the sections are going to be changed through this this process. Just a little advice as to whether you want me to go through all 11 sections or just focus on those sections that are modified.
Focus on the ones that are modified.
Okay. So with that, the conditional use permit criteria for granting conditional use permit. Letter B, the applicant shall demonstrate to the satisfaction of the board that the development will generate a net positive financial impact for the town. The planning board may require preparation and review of a fiscal impact assessment to demonstrate compliance with this requirement. And our response is attached under tab 8 is the amended fiscal impact analysis that concludes the development will produce a positive fiscal impact once the development is fully constructed and operational. I skipped the value there of that we have listed at 820,000. Their staff comments address this fiscal analysis that we had completed was done just prior to the new tax rate being released. So staff is recommending that we update the analysis to reflect the new tax rate. So that will need to modify in this application.
Is the fiscal impact improved or moderated a little bit by this change?
Well, we were reviewing that. So the value of both the apartments and the age-restricted housing, those values went up. You know, at face value, we expected the value to go down, given going from a 20,000 square foot commercial building and gas station going down to self-storage. We expected that value to drop. It increased, but looking into that report a little further, we recognize that the value of the apartments and the age-restricted units have increased. So I think once we have the adjusted numbers, it's going to show that the self-storage is a little bit lower than the previous proposals, but overall, the value is still positive in favor of the town.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. And certainly it's all that we're asking for is that it's net positive. And I'm sure your analysis also took into account not only the difference in the values of the property, but you're going to have far, far fewer police and fire calls at a self-storage than at virtually any other kind of use you could come up with.
Correct. Yeah. Now, do you want me to just go on to the next item or see if, okay.
Yeah, so discuss them all at the end.
Okay. Item D, the proposed mixed-use development shall not create undue hazard of nuisance for the vehicular or pedestrian traffic, shall include adequate provisions for safe and efficient traffic access, circulation, and parking, and shall promote pedestrian and public transportation linkage with other within and between sites to the maximum practical extent. The planning board may require preparation and review of a traffic impact assessment to demonstrate compliance with this requirement. Our response first part is pretty much similar to the previous application, and then we change a bit at the end. The applicant's traffic engineer, Stephen Perna, produced a traffic study appended in tab 9 of the original CUP application. Property is located on a limited access highway with a primary access that is signalized. Post-development level of service at the signalized intersection is projected at level B. Circulation within the development is via private entry road and spine road servicing the age-restricted apartments and 156 unit multifamily buildings. The 400-foot private road and spine road are improved with sidewalks. Sidewalks exist along Daniel Webster Highway from the south of the project boundary to the former Residence Inn. Public transportation is available through the Nashua Transit System, approximately 0.5 miles south of the project entrance. Under this amended CUP application, a traffic impact statement has been provided in section 9. The traffic impact statement has been provided to update the projected traffic counts based on the replacement of a 20,000 square foot commercial building and 4,000 square foot mini mart with 12 gas pumps with this storage facility. As outlined in the traffic impact statement, the projected impact of the self-storage will have less of an impact than contemplated under the original approved CUP. The original AM peak was 215, and again, this is just for the gas station and the previously approved commercial space. The AM peak was 215 trip ends, With the self-storage proposal, we are at 12 trip ends. In the PM peak, it was 229 trip ends. In the PM peak for the self-storage is 12 trip ends. So we were about 5 to 6% of what was a volume of what was originally proposed. So well under the previous proposal. The next item that had some modification, minimal at that, the proposed development shall provide a community of open space throughout the development. Open space and other recreational areas within the development shall be related to the projected town plans for such improvements, and should not be limited to trail and paths, although these are desirable features of the design. So in this, the big item that changed was the improvements, area of improvements. We had total land area, 1,560,000 square feet. With the increase in developed area on both lots A and B, we're up to 57,550 square feet, bringing the subtotal for the whole project up to 486,000 square feet, for a total open space percentage of 68.8%. And so that was a slight decrease in comparison to the previous approval.
Okay, so a little bit more lot coverage.
Correct. Item I, the proposed development must demonstrate compliance with the architectural design criteria contained in section 12.04.3 of the Merrimack subdivision regulations pertaining to transitional districts, provided that the planning board may permit the applicant to utilize Merrimack subdivision regulations section 12.4.2 industrial design district criteria for exclusively industrial facilities within the development. Under that, there's items in our response, A through J. It's only the last two items, I and J, that are being modified. The self-storage buildings on lot A and B will be single level, non-climate controlled building with no internal hallways. Roll-up access doors will be provided around the perimeter of the building, all the buildings, and the roofs will be low sloped pitching metal roofs. A color rendering has been provided to demonstrate the bulk, size, colors, and materials to be used. And then the last one, the self-storage office will be a 1,200 square foot wood frame building with standard metal seam hip roof. The siding will be two-tone wood look, clapboards and shakes with horizontal and vertical dividing trim. And with that, that's all the items that had substantial change in the CUP list. So
thank you for the presentation, and I want to have a general discussion about the CUP. Some of the elements that are sort of on the tip of the tongue for discussion are site plan related, and it may help for us to give you kind of a preview of what we think that the site plan may require. But those, obviously that discussion is not for here or for today. My observations of what some of those site plan issues might be, you talked about a security fence around the property, and the elevation that you showed a nice black wrought iron 6-foot fence or something like that, which is a very visually attractive fence. And I would want to see specifics on what you're proposing when you get to site plan review, so that we know what it will look like, and whether it's proposed to be, something with some visual attractiveness, or whether it's chain link or, wood panel or whatever. I think that you'd have to get waivers from certain requirements that require 100-foot stretches of the building to be broken up with relief, architectural relief, because they're obviously, the nature of storage is that they're supposed to be all lined up in a row. and you'd want relief from that provision. Do you plan to do U-Haul rentals or some truck rentals from the property?
No, my understanding, and maybe Gordon can chime in on this, but no, typically that's not offered at his facility.
So our approach with these in the past is to consider that, or the code enforcement department, not code enforcement, the community development department looks at that as an ancillary use that's allowed. But because of this being a part of a conditional use permit, if you've got ambitions to do truck rentals, I want to see the wheres and the whys on the plan, or else have a condition on the plan that says you're not going to do it. So the parking spaces along Daniel Webster Highway, are those for people's storage of campers and boats and that sort of thing?
Correct. Yeah, 46 outdoor spaces.
So when it comes to the site plan review, I'd want to understand visually. I know there's a difference in elevation. I think your parking lot's about 10 feet below the level of Daniel Webster Highway, something like that. But I'd want to have a real understanding of what that's going to look like from Daniel Webster Highway, and potentially whether you'd considered putting that in the back of the lot instead of the front of the lot, just so that from Daniel Webster Highway you get the better visual appearance. And it may not be possible. You can tell me why or why not, but
well, yeah, we took a look at that. That was one of the first things we were looking at, but we've got a front setback on Daniel Webster Highway of 100 feet for structures and 50 feet for pavement. So, you know, by putting all the parking spaces to the rear of the property forces all the buildings towards Daniel Webster Highway, and we essentially lose two of the buildings, which is a large percentage of, you know, the gross floor area.
Yeah, or else you'd have to get a variance. That makes a lot of sense. Think about whatever kind of visual screening that you could do, either fencing or landscaping, to make sure that the view from Daniel Webster Highway, as well as from Benning Court, is as appealing as you can make it. Your buildings certainly look fine. They're, you know, attractive looking buildings. They don't need to be completely obscured, but nonetheless, trees are better looking than buildings. So think about that. The obvious drainage calculations and analysis has to be a part of the puzzle as well when you come to site plan approval. I mentioned landscaping or buffering or that sort of thing. From the apartment buildings down below, what's their view when they look up the hill at the warehouses? What are they going to be able to see?
So a lot of that area,
not much of anything.
It's going to be a lot of wooded area in this.
Yeah, and they're looking at the back of those other buildings.
Yeah, it's,
they have a straight shot view.
Yeah.
Okay. I like the idea of not connecting to that driveway that goes over to the former Nashua Corp and whatever that other company's called, Huntsman. I know that was a issue of contention in the earlier proposal, so I think it's definitely an improvement to get rid of that. I think this does have a little bit of synergy with the residential uses who may want to use. I certainly won't fill up your self-storage, but they'll use some of it. And there's at least some connection with it. Definitely high demand for self-storage, or at least so it appears by the fact that they're building them literally everywhere. Site lighting. Is it going to be 24-hour access where somebody can come and go as they please to get to their stuff?
I believe so. Gordon, are you able to chime in?
I'm unmuted, but I haven't been able to start the video for some reason.
Okay.
As far as access, the access is controlled by the automated gate system. Tenants will have access. Typical hours are 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Very limited customers that prove a need for a commercial, customer that would have a particular need to have 24-hour. It may be available to them, but it would be on a very limited basis.
Okay. Do the warehouse units have electricity?
No, they do not.
Okay. So they're purely for storage. Nobody's going to set up kind of their quasi.
No, absolutely not.
Contractors yard there.
Strictly storage, not for an operation of any kind.
Very good. You mentioned the elevation that you showed was for another existing facility. Can you provide some specifics just in case between now and site plan we happen to drive by one, we could remember to take a look?
That particular elevation is for a project that is in the same process of advancing a site plan in Hooksett.
Okay.
So it's not in existence at the moment.
Do you have one that is?
I actually, I've built 3 facilities. Ironically, the first one I built, which was a little over 20 years ago, was in the north side of Merrimack at, I believe it was 751 Daniel Webster Highway, what's now the Extra Space.
Okay. Drive by it every day. It's an attractive looking facility.
And Mr. Disco, I have to applaud you because I recall you from that process 23 years ago. And I'll be honest, I'm amazed at your longevity in this, but I applaud your service to the town.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're well north of 40 years now.
Yeah, I've done one in Manchester off exit 1 on bypass 28, right at the intersection of Wellington Road and bypass 28. And also the most recent one was in Londonderry on Rockingham and Mammoth Road.
Okay.
So.
Sounds good. And the demand just won't go away, huh?
I've had my eye on this particular area for a number of years. In the past, I looked at lot 2E62. That alone was not large enough for me to pursue. I was not enamored with the access off that private roadway as well. But when I became aware of Mr. Plant and Mr. Slattery's efforts with this whole mixed use project and the ability to combine lot 2E7 off of a new road, that's when I pursued engaging them for, hopefully acquiring this property and going through the approval process.
Excellent. We mentioned trucks and truck rentals, and Jason, I think, mentioned that he didn't think that you did, but can you clarify that one way or another, whether you do truck rentals from the site?
There will be no U-Haul, Penske, or any other rentals off the property. That's not part of the model that I pursue. This property will be managed by a company that I use for third-party management, which is Life Storage. They're one of the national operators that own and operate about 700 of their own facilities. And then they manage roughly a little more than 300 properties for other developers like myself.
Okay.
So this will be professionally managed by a well-respected outfit in the industry, and I've been nothing but pleased with their performance in the past.
That's good to hear. So in addition to curiosity about whether they be trucks, how about the MyBox, U-Box, whatever those temporary storage things
that's
are?
Not part of my model either. No
pods,
mobile containers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Does any other member of the board have questions about what's proposed? Nelson, I see your hand.
Yeah, Bob, I just want to second your comments regarding the visual appearance of this from the Daniel Webster Highway. I think the picture he shows is interesting, but probably not too applicable to how ours will look. And also, I wanted to recommend some heavy landscaping along there as an alternate, maybe in addition to the fencing for security, but to have something that screens it, if you will, or makes it attractive appearing from the road. This is our front door down here, and I'd like it to look nice. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Tim, you have a hand up.
Just to address Nelson's comment there, those are certainly things I think they are applicable to the site plan review when we get to that stage, but I don't know that they're necessarily applicable to the amendment to the CUP. The other thing I wanted to mention is going back to the issue of the parking spaces along DW, that would not necessarily require a variance to make that modification. Under the conditional use permit language of the zoning ordinance, the planning board has the ability to modify and change dimensional requirements So if you wanted to see the parking to the back, you could reduce that 100-foot setback to whatever you so chose as part of the CUP process.
That's good information to have. So if they made that change, where's the, what's the edge of the Daniel Webster Highway right away? It's certainly well beyond pavement.
Right in this area.
Okay. So that is relatively close to the edge of pavement, huh?
Correct, right behind the sidewalk.
Okay. So if you're interested in pursuing that, and it certainly would be something the planning board, I would support if flipping around the lot so that the parking spaces were in the back. Tim's information is that you could do that and it would require no variances because in the conditional use permit context, the planning board has authority to permit that.
The board would need to specifically include that as part of your motion tonight to allow that.
If the applicant so chose. I think that there's probably ways to have an attractive property in either configuration. And so I don't necessarily think that I'd say you have to, but I would love to look at it and see if it's possible and what the layout would look like.
I think it would be beneficial that we at least have that option to have that conversation, maybe meet with Tim and run over some ideas and concepts and layouts. You know, so having that option available, I think would be a benefit.
I think the board could simply add to the motion that the front structural setback from Daniel Webster Highway may be reduced to a distance of 50 or whatever it is that the pavement setback currently is.
Yeah, 50 feet.
Okay. If that's the will of the board, we may be able to provide that relief to you. Other members of the board have any questions? I know that we're talking about site plan and Tim is steering us back into the middle, and I'm really just only doing that to provide the applicant with a preview of some of the things that we'd like to see when we get to a site plan review.
That was my intention as well. I wasn't trying to get him to change this.
No.
As far as I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, as far as the amendment goes, I'd be in favor of that, but I would just like to express that I have a little bit of a concern about all that outdoor storage for automobiles, the outdoor, parking spaces. I always like to make sure that, the plan is going to reflect some way of preventing any leakage from vehicles or protection to the water, gas stand separators. There was a gas station proposed for the spot before, so all that would have had to have been, addressed for that. It's a lot of spaces of cars to sit there, and for the potential of leaking all over the place. So,
yeah,
just more a comment than anything.
Yeah. I think there could be a fair number of trailers, but there certainly should be some motorhomes with engines and boats and things that could leak. So it's worth thinking about in the water runoff context of oil water separator or something to make sure that there's protection for that. Other comments or questions? I think when we would look at this at a site plan review, we'd be real interested to make sure that the site lighting was certainly sufficient for your use, but no more than necessary, and has all the vertical cutoffs and things that protect the site lighting from affecting the neighbors or the residences down the way. And pretty standard engineering stuff, not rocket science, but we'd want to know about those things. Other comments or questions? If not, we don't have to decide that it's complete because it's an amendment to a CUP. We would simply have to make a motion to amend the CUP as proposed by the applicant with the considerations discussed here tonight. And then if that's approved, the applicant would have some job of work to do to amend its development plan or development agreement with the town and come back with a site plan for us to look at with the details we talked about. Tim, is that the correct overview of the process?
Tim was having some connection issues, so he'll be right back.
All right, we'll let Tim rejoin us here in a second. There he is. Does anyone have any further comments or questions about it? I think that this is, a gas station would have been nice because there's not really another one down that area too much mobile bonbons down there, but it would have been a nice place for one. But if there's no developer that wants to do it, it's just, not feasible. And the other sort of retail office, 20,000 square feet, is just a real out of fashion land use these days. There's unused retail and office space on the market all over the place. And COVID is teaching us how to not need it anymore. So it's no surprise that the applicant has to move away from that. Tim, are you back and available to answer a question?
I am.
Thanks. I was just trying to give a 2-second overview of what process would happen tonight if we voted to amend the CUP. I would anticipate the motion would be to amend the CUP consistent with the applicant's presentation and the considerations decided here tonight. And then from there, what happens?
From there, it would be meeting the proposed conditions of approval that are outlined in my memo. Once that is done and the board signs off on the amended CUP, they can start the site plan review process. Actually, they could concurrently start the site plan review process with a conditionally approved CUP. They just would need to have the final approval of the CUP before the board could take final action on the site plan.
Is it in your conditions or some part of the process that they would have to consider whether there's an amendment to their development agreement with the town?
Yes.
That's one of the conditions?
Yes.
Okay. And then that's not something the planning board would normally take any active role in?
No, the previous three that have been handled between my staff and the town engineer. Excuse me, the town attorney.
Sounds like a good way to handle it. If there's no other comments or questions by the board, what is the will of the board? Tim, did I hand up for a comment?
That was whether or not the board was considering adding that flexibility on the setback for the site to allow for the building layout to be changed.
I'd be inclined to support it as an option, not a requirement.
That's all the.
Actually, before we get to potentially taking motions, I don't see anybody on the call that isn't already accounted for, but we should at least gavel open and close the public hearing. Are there any abutters or citizens who wish to weigh in? Seeing none, we can close the public hearing. Now, what's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that we grant conditional final approval to the applicant with the conditions as contained in Tim's memo of November 24th, 2020, as he enumerated this evening.
Is there a second for Alistair's motion?
I'll second.
Second by Nelson. Bill Boyd, do you have a question?
Yeah, can I speak to the motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll make this very brief. I'm going to oppose the amendment. You alluded to the gas station earlier, Mr. Chairman. I really think, and I say this with a tremendous amount of respect to the applicant and to the developer, this is a lost opportunity to provide a necessary service to some of the development that's going on down in the south end of town. And not only would, some of the developments that we have at Blanchard Point, Bowers Landing, Harris Pond, people of North Nashua would also benefit. Cloverly Apartments, the Hills Ferry neighborhood, Atherton Avenue would really benefit from this particular service because based on this location outside of Bonbons, there's about 1.5 miles north up the road. It's very difficult to find a mini mart and a gas station within relative ease of access to where they originally wanted to propose this. I think for me, from an economic development perspective, it certainly is a lost opportunity. But with that being said, I am thankful that they are coming to Merrimack, thankful that they're choosing to build here. And I hope that my comments don't reflect negatively about the project in general. I'm very happy that they're coming to Merrimack to do business. I just feel the gas station is a better use of the site from a regional perspective than a self-storage facility. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Bill. I certainly thought the same thing about the potential demand for that, although I guess they've tested the market and they can't find a developer that wants to do it. And When there's a way to make a profit, a developer would come in and want to do it. So someone's doing their math and saying, no, not for me. So that's what kind of backs me away from being too strong in favor of the development of that kind of a bodega. Jason.
Yeah, do have a quick question about one of the conditions, and it's about any forthcoming comments from municipal departments. Tim, have you received anything from any of the other departments at this time?
I have not, and I honestly don't expect that we will until we get the site plan.
Okay, all right. I just didn't know if there was anything that might surprise us, that's all. Okay.
No, and from what I know of the things that they get interested in, I don't think that you've got a lot to worry about. You've got good access for the fire department, you got good access for the roads. So I wouldn't expect, as long as you deal with drainage correctly, I don't think that you'll have a lot of issues with them. Okay, Alistair, you made your motion. Nelson, you seconded it. It's to grant the CUP amendment subject to the conditions in the memo and with the option discussed here tonight. Is there any other discussion about it? Then Alistair, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Bill?
Boyd votes nay.
Neil Incatel?
I vote aye.
Nelson Disco?
Aye.
Bob Best votes aye. 410 to grant the amendment to the conditional use permit. And I'll certainly express my sympathies to the reasoning behind Bill's opposition vote. I understand it and would have loved to have seen that succeed here. I think the applicant's probably given it the old college try. Thank you and welcome to Merrimack, and look forward to your successful development, Mr. Welsh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your time and other members of the board. Look forward to advancing the site plan and coming back before you in the hopefully not too far future.
Excellent. Good to hear.
Thank you very much for your time.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
You as
Yes. Okay, item 7 on our agenda is discussion and possible action regarding other items of concern. There's a note on my sheet here about the PMG site plan gas station at 1 Continental Boulevard and an extension of conditional approval for that. Tim, what do we need to know about what they're asking us to do?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. On the screen, I've shared the letter from Courtney Hertz of, which I can't remember which law firm, Shaheen Finney, regarding the CMG gas station that was the renovation at 1 Continental. Ultimately, the state permits are taking longer than expected, primarily due to the restrictions and access issues with COVID-19. So staff is supportive of an extension of an additional 6 months so that they can finalize their state permits on the project.
All right, so this is the Gulf Station at exit 11.
Correct.
Next to Franklin Savings Bank?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any comments or questions about the extension requests? These are something we typically have been pretty easy to provide when there's been no change in our regulations, which there haven't been.
Yes, these did follow the new regulations.
Excellent. If there's no comments, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move Tim Thompson's recommendation to extend the period as written in the letter.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
That was a tie between Nelson and Neil. Nelson can have it this time. All right, let's do a roll call vote. Alistair.
I agree, Mr. Chairman.
Bill Boyd.
Boyd votes aye.
Neil Ancatel.
I'm in favor.
Nelson Disco.
Aye.
Bob Best votes aye. 5-0-0 for that. Tim, was that the one that you had mentioned in an email to me, or is there another extension
that's the
to
only
consider?
thing we had.
Okay.
That's it.
Does anyone else have any discussion or possible action regarding other items of concern? The only one that I would offer is just to be on our soapbox and invite anyone interested in serving on the planning board or any other land use board to get in touch with Tim.
In addition, if any of you or any interested citizen is interested in serving the National Regional Planning Commission, there is a commissioner position open for the town of Merrimack. So please touch base with the town manager's office if you're interested in that. Karen Elmer.
What?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
That's the email I got that Eileen and I got. Was it seemed to indicate that Karen was not going to continue.
Wow, that's.
It's been on there forever.
I have nothing. If I could, Mr. Chairman, I've served with Karen on the NRPC. She's a planner in Bedford. You know, we talk about our good friend Nelson being, you know, institutional knowledge. Karen is right up there of just being a wealth of information, not just with the stuff that she's working on in Bedford, but for some of the regional impact issues, being from Merrimack as well. Huge loss. I didn't even know about this. This is a huge loss to the commission, and it's a huge loss to the town of Merrimack because she did her job very well as a commissioner. She was chair for a couple of years. Wow, that's sad to hear. I'm saddened to hear that she's leaving, but I'm assuming she's moving on to greener pastures, and I wish her nothing but best of success. But that's huge.
Yeah, I got Eileen and I received the email last Tuesday. It just simply states that NRPC is reaching out to member communities regarding expirations and vacancies. Current Merrimack commissioners include Bill Boyd and Tim Tenhave. Karen Elmer's term has expired, and there's one vacancy to be filled.
Okay.
Wow, that's really something.
Yep.
So, anyone that's watching us on TV, if there is anybody watching us on TV or on Zoom or wherever else that's interested in that or service on the planning board. I don't know whether the other board, zoning or conservation.
We have vacancy on the zoning board as well.
So come on down and be a part of town government. There's jobs for you.
What I would say about the NRPC is they meet quarterly. Unless you want to serve on the executive board like I did, I gained some really valuable experience sitting on the executive board for about 18 months. They meet monthly. They deal with personnel issues, budget issues. Really get, being an executive board member, you get a little bit more integrated into the day-to-day workings with the NRPC. We're very lucky having Jamin Carr as our executive director. He's amazing. Again, institutional knowledge, the wealth of experience that he brings to the position. So, being an NRPC member is just, 4 times a year. You get to meet people from different parts of the region. You get to learn and experience some of the issues that they're dealing with. If you want to step up into the executive board when there's an opening, a great opportunity to, like I said, to roll up your sleeves and get a little bit more, integrated with the inner workings. So, with us here at the planning board and the NRPC, tremendous opportunity to really have a profound impact on how we are building our communities, both locally and at a regional level. Great opportunity.
Thank you for that. I would add to the comment, Nelson, I see you. I'll call you in a second. I'd add to the comment that we're not very far off as a planning board from tackling a next master plan. And that's also an opportunity to have an impact, either as a member of either of those two organizations or just as an interested citizen who wants to be a part of that, because the master plan process is open for all the folks that are interested in doing so. So in addition to that opportunity, we probably ought to one more time go down our checklist from our last master plan and see how we're doing and what's left and what needs to be done, if anything. If there's any goals that we had set back in 2013 that are simply just not consistent with where we see ourselves going, let's note those and cross them off so that we can have a good starting point for when we do master planning again. Tim, I know that we've made you do that a couple of times with going through the master plan and saying, well, where are we with things? What would it take to do another update and seeing where we are with goals, at least the ones that the planning board is responsible for?
I'm not going to be able to commit myself to it. As you typically know, the December meeting is usually the last time you see me for a few months because I now transition into budget season with the town council. So you'll be seeing a lot more of Robert and Casey. So I will coordinate with Robert and we'll put together a game plan as to when we can put together a workshop discussion on that in the next couple of months.
Thank you. Nelson, what did you have on your mind?
Oh, because when Bill was making his plug for the National Regional Planning Commission, I wanted to put in a plug for the Merrimack Town Center Committee, which is down 2 persons, and it's a much simpler process. We meet maybe every 6 weeks or so, and it's a 1-hour meeting, and it's not very demanding, but it does give you some insight into some of the workings of the town and some of the things we're trying to do for the town center. So a plug to anyone listening who would like something to do once every 6 weeks. Thank you.
Yeah, come on down and volunteer. Pay it forward a little bit.
Come on down.
All right, enough of that. Any other items of concern? Then we've got on our agenda the approval of the minutes of November 10th, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, move the November 10th, 2020 minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Second by Nelson Disco. Any discussion? Don't see any. Then Alistair, how do you vote on the minutes?
I vote aye.
Bill Boyd?
Boyd votes aye.
Neil Anketel?
Vote aye.
Nelson Disco?
Aye.
Bob Best votes aye, 5-0-0. That concludes all of the business that's on our agenda, and so a motion to adjourn would be in order if someone would be willing to make one. It's moved by Boyd, second by Anketel. Alistair, how do you vote?
I vote aye, Mr. Chairman.
Boyd?
I vote aye.
Anketel?
I vote aye.
Disco?
Aye.
Best votes aye, 5-0-0 to adjourn. Thank you all for the work and have a great night, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Merrimack TV is committed to our community. From gavel-to-gavel coverage of town and school board meetings to updates on town services and projects, we aim to keep you connected.
Good morning. I'm Kyle Fox, Public Works Director for the town of Merrimack.
Hi, I'm Diane Trippett. I'm the town clerk tax collector for the town of Merrimack.
I'm Captain Matt Tarleton with the Merrimack, New Hampshire Police Department.
And keep the public informed of every motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
And many moments, so you can be confident that we're here for you. Thanks for watching. Stay connected. Follow Merrimack TV on Facebook.